Our story takes place in the medieval city of Ebelstein. In it lived a man known to everyone as the Proud Old Man. He was only a first-rank mage but was always bragging around town. His stories were so exaggerated that he called himself a great mage and had a terrible temper. Our protagonist watched that strange old man from a distance. So it was from this man that our boy learned about magic. But they had no special reason to be together. The master just needed a follower to listen to his stories, while the boy just needed knowledge about that world. Time passed and the seasons changed while the two stayed together. During this period, the boy trained in the fundamentals of magic. With this, he worked hard every day to master the flow of mana. The old man wonders if the boy really understood how mana works. At that instant, the boy's eye glows with an intense red light. He then concentrates all the energy in his hand to create a spell. Suddenly, he unleashes a powerful spell that impresses his master. The attack hits a tree right in front of him. After the training, the old man approaches his apprentice to talk. While the boy served him in every way he could, he tried very hard. In this way, in just 1 year, he became a first-rank mage. One night, while at their camp, the old man began to speak. He said that the nobles of Ebelstein reached the 3rd rank at a very young age, and that someone with the boy's lineage would take a lifetime to get there. The old man always said that in magic, bloodline was everything. Maybe he was just frustrated by things he couldn't achieve. That night, the boy watched the old man sleep by the fire. The next day, a heavy rain began to fall on the camp. When the boy returned to the site, he found his master on the ground. His body was covered in bruises, as if he had been in a fight. The boy thought he had gotten into a fight somewhere and ended up like this. Later, while burying him, the young man finally discovered the truth. The old man was caught trying to steal a 2nd-rank magic tome. So the city guards caught him and put an end to his life. No one knew why an old man without ambition would do such a thing. At that moment, the boy remembered his master's words, but to his surprise, a system screen appeared in front of him. He was not from that world, and because of that, he awakened something, and 4 years passed. During that time, he met a woman named Keisha Flameheart. She was a 3rd-rank noble mage whose family had fallen into ruin. Keisha stayed in Ebelstein and taught the boy, who had joined some mercenaries. In this way, the young man learned many things from the experienced mage. One day, they were in a tavern called Belden's Tears. The woman says that as a mage, it's natural to want to level up, and he has talent, but she warns him that excessive ambition will only delay his achievements. The boy then replies that he will remember her advice. Keisha then asks him to close his eyes and feel the mana around him. He concentrates to feel the mana and imagine the shape he wants to create. A blue aura begins to emanate from the boy's body as he meditates. The woman notices that he has a lot of mana and very stable control. The boy's eyes glow with a purple light, showing his power. His master is surprised to see the boy's mana getting out of control. Suddenly, a very loud sound echoes throughout the tavern, startling everyone. The people inside wonder in fear what that noise was. The young mage looks at his hands, confused by what he just did. At that moment, his master holds his hand to calm him down a bit. She then asks the boy to follow her without saying a single word. Outside, the mercenaries search for the source of the explosion. Meanwhile, the two of them escape through an alley to avoid being discovered. The boy then asks his master what is happening. The woman turns to her apprentice and asks him to listen carefully. The boy agrees as he eagerly waits for her words. She explains that nobles are sensitive about their privileges, and magic is the greatest of them all. Innate power is a blessing for nobles, but for commoners, it's different, and what he used was something far beyond what was expected for someone like him. His master reveals that he used a 2nd-rank illusion spell. Thus, at 14 years old, he became a 2nd-rank mage. After that, Keisha continued to teach the boy about magic in high society. A year later, the woman says goodbye to the boy as she needed to leave. She was appointed as a private tutor for the powerful family of Count Elvester. This was an offer that a ruined noble like her could not refuse. Becoming a magic instructor for a noble was a great blessing. As a farewell gift, she left a 2nd-rank magic tome. Then another year passed as the boy dedicated himself to his studies. During this time, he managed to master 2 more 2nd rank spells. At just 16 years old, he was already an extremely skilled mage, and he had no intention of stopping there anytime soon. The boy then asks what kind of commission they finally got. The man replies that the mission came from the great ducal house of de Duplain. The young man becomes suspicious and wonders why they would seek them out. His boss says it doesn't matter because they spend gold like water. He says this is a chance to build a connection with the nobles. The boy then asks what exactly they need to do on the mission. The man replies that they just need to defeat some simple monsters. He finds it very suspicious that a noble house would ask this of a group of mercenaries. Because of this, the boy stands up and refuses the job on the spot. He turns and says he doesn't accept jobs that seem suspicious. His boss yells that they need a mage for the mission, and they are rare. The young man says a mage wouldn't be necessary for a simple hunt. He raises his fist and refuses to be dragged into something unnecessary. His boss then offers 1 gold coin just as an advance payment. The boy looks at the coin in his hand and seems to reconsider the offer. A while later, he meets with the client, a nobleman with a monocle. With him was a lady with a kind and gentle appearance, and also a mysterious young woman with her face covered by a hood. The boss asks the boy to greet the clients, but he refuses. The nobleman gets angry that they sent a child for the commission. The boss defends his mage, saying he is the most capable one he knows. Even so, the old man says this is not a task for a child. He then turns to his companion and whispers something in her ear. The 3 clients then prepare to leave the tavern. The hooded young woman calls the boy's name and asks to talk. They then travel to the Grand Duchy of Duplain for the mission. The boy attacks a goblin with his magic while doing his job. His eyes glow with an intense red power in the middle of combat. With a swift movement, he slices the monster in 2 with his sword. Another goblin tries to attack him from behind with a small dagger. The creature lunges forward, its eyes glowing, ready to attack. But the boy grabs it by the neck and finishes it off with ease. Suddenly, he is surrounded by a horde of furious goblins. The young man turns and tells the nobleman that the job is finished. The old man and his companions watch the battlefield, impressed. The hooded young woman comments that he took care of everything very quickly. Back at the tavern, the boss asks the boy how the job went. A blonde mercenary climbs on the table and yells at the boy furiously. Her boss scolds her, but she continues, telling him not to be a noble's dog. The girl asks how much they paid him to throw away his pride. The boss then reveals that the payment was 1 silver coin per year. He smiles slyly as he waits for the mercenary's reaction. The girl is shocked, and her eyes shine with greed. She then begs for them to let her crawl between the noble's legs. Later that night, the boss and the boy talk about the mission. The blonde mercenary is passed out on the table after drinking too much. The boy says he took down some goblins, and that the nobles seemed to have money, but he reveals that the 3 of them were lying about their identities. His boss is surprised and asks if he is sure about that. The young man explains that the old man didn't have the qualities of a noble official, and the woman who claimed to be a maid had hands that were too clean. Before he can talk about the young woman, his boss interrupts him. The boy then falls silent and stares at him with his red eyes. The man says that as mercenaries, they just do the job and take the money. The boy agrees but still seems suspicious of the mission. His boss says that in the wild, only survival matters and nothing else. The next day, they return to the Grand Duchy of Duplain. The young man informs them that the goblins won't be appearing for a long time. The boss then asks about the remaining payment for the mission. The nobleman then tosses 2 shiny gold coins to him. The boss gets excited, but the boy asks to talk with them first. The old man then clears his throat and prepares to speak with the boy. He says he values his skills and wants to give him a new commission. The boss is confused and scratches his head. Not understanding anything, the man offers 15 gold coins for the next mission. He then asks if the boy accepts the irresistible offer. The young mage nods his head and accepts the new job. They then set off in a carriage to the location of the new mission. They arrive at the impressive estate of the Grand Duchy of Duplain. The boss is amazed by the size of the ducal mansion. Before entering, the old man decides to introduce himself formally. He reveals himself as Melrin, the chief administrator of the ducal residence. The boss is speechless upon discovering the client's true identity. The lady introduces herself as Katerina, the head housekeeper of the residence. The boss bows, apologizing for not recognizing them sooner. The boy realizes that their positions are higher than he had imagined. The young woman then steps forward, removing her hood. The boss is surprised as he deduces who she really is. The young woman slowly removes her hood, revealing her face to them. Her long black hair sways in the wind. The boy watches her intently, waiting for her to reveal herself. She introduces herself as Aisline, the eldest daughter of the Duplain family. The boy is confused to find out she wants him as a tutor. They are then invited to enter the immense Duplain mansion. The doors open, revealing the luxurious interior of the residence. In the room, a young nobleman enters, complaining to his father about something. The Duke asks his son to act with more dignity in front of him. The son says he is not the one who needs dignity, but Diella. He complains that she has crossed the line and assaulted the house servants. Another blond man asks his younger brother to lower his voice. The young man continues shouting that she breaks furniture whenever she wants. He asks his father how long they will tolerate her behavior. The blond brother raises his voice and calls his attention again. He says that's enough and that the matter is not open for discussion. The young man falls silent for a moment, looking annoyed. He argues that even if Diallo is a lost cause, they still have Aisline. He thinks it would be better to let her go for everyone's sake. The Duke intervenes, says it's not his place to decide his sister's fate. The son replies that he has already sent the butler to look for convents. The Duke stands up furiously and grabs his son by the hair. With a swift movement, he slams his head hard against the table. He repeats that the decision does not belong to his son. The young man, collapsed on the table, says he will have to decide eventually. The Duke stares at him with a cold and intimidating expression. At that moment, Aisline and the boy enter the Duke's room. She asks if he has heard of her sister Diala before. He says yes, and that the girl is not often seen in public. The doors to the room open, drawing the attention of everyone present. Aisline greets her brother with a gentle smile on her face. The blonde man returns the smile and asks how it was in Ebelstein. She replies that it was very comfortable and thanks him for his concern. The blonde man fixes the fallen brother's hair and says they'll talk later. The boy observes the scene, feeling a very strange atmosphere in the room. The two brothers leave the room, leaving Aisline and the Duke alone. The boy continues with his cold gaze, analyzing the situation. He sees a maid crying while being comforted by Aisline. He maintains his serious expression, showing no emotion. The Duke says he is happy she is doing well in Ebelstein. Aisline thanks him and introduces the boy as Diala's new tutor. The Duke analyzes the boy for a moment, looking thoughtful. Aisline says goodbye to her father and calls for the boy to accompany her. The Duke then asks the boy to stay in the room for a moment. The young man turns around, confused by the nobleman's unexpected request. A ray of sunlight illuminates the large room through the huge window. The Duke signs some papers while talking to the young man. The nobleman thinks he is very young and questions him about being only 16. The boy confirms while maintaining his posture before the Duke. The man then asks to what extent he can use magic. The Duke adjusts his glasses with a scornful smile. He says the boy doesn't need to lie, and that humility is not always a virtue. The young man remains silent, showing no emotion. The Duke releases his powerful blue aura throughout the room to intimidate the boy. The young man bows and apologizes if he was disrespectful. The nobleman says he understands, and that his excessive talent sometimes blinds him. The boy interrupts him and says firmly that he is a mercenary. The Duke calms down and says he will let him go since it was Aisline's choice. He says a maid will guide him, and the boy asks to ask a question. The nobleman tells him to continue without even looking him in the eye. The boy says that as a mercenary, he always completes his commissions, and Aisline's mission was to teach Diala magic. The Duke stares at him, wondering why he's stating the obvious. The young man then makes a humble request to the nobleman. The Duke remains silent, staring at him, confused by his attitude. Suddenly, a plate flies towards a wall in the mansion. The object shatters, and the shards fly towards the maid. The girl cowers in fear while apologizing repeatedly. The mysterious girl yells, telling the maid to get out of her sight. The boy observes a steaming cup of tea on a table. He remembers asking Aisline why he was chosen. The young woman said that all the famous teachers had given up on Diela. His boss said that even though he's a mercenary, he knows how to act like a noble. Aisline smiles and says he seemed kind and elegant to her. The boss laughs, saying she still has a lot to learn about people. He continues, saying that the young man is a mage who grew up on the streets. Aisline is surprised to discover the truth about the boy. The young man then follows, accompanied by one of the maids. He stops in front of a large wooden door in the hallway. The boy raises his hand, hesitating for a moment before entering. He then knocks on the door twice, announcing his arrival. The young man remains silent for a second, hearing no response. The boy then turns the doorknob, opening the large door. The boy enters the room and greets the girl formally. He introduces himself as Derek to the blonde-haired girl. She asks him to come closer, revealing herself as Diala. Derek approaches his new student with slow steps. A malicious smile appears on Diala's face. Suddenly, something hits Derek, soaking his entire face. Water runs down his hair and face as he remains impassive. Diala smiles and taunts him, asking what we have here. She says he must be the sewer rat the butler mentioned. The girl in the red dress firmly grips the back of a chair. Diala climbs on top of one of the tables, feeling superior. The noble girl throws more water on him, saying it suits him better. The boy remains silent as water drips from his chin. The noble girl smiles mockingly, announcing that all the water in the bucket is gone. The young man continues to stand there silently with a serious and cold look. At this, the blonde girl is completely surprised by his reaction. She tries to kick the boy, but he catches her leg in mid-air. Then, the boy lets go of her leg and crouches down near the floor. The little noble girl gets very angry and stomps hard on the chair. She then covers her nose, complaining that the mercenary stinks. The blonde girl decides to put her foot on the boy's shoulder to humiliate him. With this, the girl leans forward, showing her superiority. The noble girl displays her bare foot, telling the young man to know his place. At this moment, the scene changes, revealing a large table full of books. The Duke appears with his back to us, looking out the window of his office. The man maintains a very thoughtful and serious expression. The nobleman talks to the young man, explaining how difficult the situation is. The boy listens to all the man's words very attentively. The old man then asks how much authority he needs for the job. Suddenly, a very hard slap hits the young noble's face. The blonde girl falls to the floor, completely shocked by the boy's action. The mercenary looks down at the girl with a very cold expression. The young woman touches her own red face, unable to believe what happened. The young mage just tells the girl to get up from the floor right now. A flashback to 3 years ago shows the boy traveling in a wagon. He asks his former master how to deal with stubborn students. The woman smiles and says she would try to understand and also guide the student. The young man finds this too idealistic and decides to question her method. She explains that if talking doesn't work, another method must be used. The master makes a very scary face, saying the right way is to use fear. Back in the present, the girl remains completely paralyzed with shock. The boy warns that he won't repeat the order and tells her to get up now. The little noble girl clenches her hands on the floor, feeling immense anger. She gets up quickly and tries to punch the boy in the face. The young woman screams furiously, asking who the trash thinks he is. At that moment, the boy lands another very hard slap on the blonde's face. The young mage maintains his threatening gaze, warning her to be respectful. The blonde girl makes an expression of pure hatred, wanting to end his life. She starts screaming desperately, calling for all the guards in the house. The old butler runs into the large room in a complete panic. The blonde brother enters furiously and grabs the young man by the shoulders. But the mercenary remains very calm and shows a rolled-up document. He explains that the Duke has granted him full authority in the girl's education. The old butler adjusts his monocle and reads the paper, completely shocked. The blonde girl notices the old man's reaction and understands that no one will help her. The scene cuts to the huge mansion, being illuminated by the light of the full moon. The dark-haired brother tries to calm the blonde one by pulling his arm. The blonde one refuses to listen and shouts, wanting to know if he is the mercenary. The young mage remains seated calmly, holding his book. The blonde noble tries to attack the boy, but his brother holds him back tightly. The young man just states that everything was done with the Duke's permission. The brother reminds the blonde one that the boy is a guest of their older sister. The blonde noble calms down and tells the mercenary to follow him elsewhere. The older noble tries to calm the situation by touching the mage's shoulder and assures him that no one will harm him. At this, the silver-haired boy just turns his head slightly, agreeing with what he just heard. The man continues walking down the hall, and the mercenary follows him while the other brother just watches. The scene cuts to a little girl sitting in the dark, holding her doll with an innocent look. Then, the two young men arrive in front of large double doors and open the entrance to the new room. The blonde man explains that this was the little noble's old room, and that it is now completely abandoned. The mage approaches a large canvas, observing a beautiful landscape painting. With this, the brother recalls that the girl used to love drawing, being very cute when showing off her art. But the man reports that the little one could never finish a painting, leaving a large part of the canvas blank. The mercenary decides to apologize for acting emotionally earlier, and the noble tells him to forget it. The boy looks at several paintings stacked on the floor, wanting to know why he was brought there. At this, the blonde man reveals with a sad tone that his sister wasn't bad until she became obsessed with her own lineage. The mage listens intently as the older one laments, not understanding why the young woman changed so much. The silver-haired boy touches some old books, hearing that they need to prevent her from going to a monastery. Then the blonde man grabs the mercenary's shoulders in a desperate tone, begging him to save his sister. But the young mage raises his hand, asking for a moment to think and analyze the whole situation. He picks up a blue notebook, noticing several notes, and realizes the girl never gave up on learning magic. The boy concludes that these are theoretical discipline books, and the blonde man confirms the teacher's suspicion. With this, the mercenary makes a very serious expression, seeming to have formed a perfect plan in his mind. The scene focuses on a beautiful painting of a lush green forest full of trees, and very well detailed. At this, the silver-haired boy closes the blue notebook with force, making a final decision about his new path. He turns to the noble, holding the book, and states with conviction that he will try to help the stubborn girl. The scene cuts to the large mansion illuminated only by the faint light of the moon in the dead of night. The little noble sleeps peacefully in her luxurious bed, seemingly having forgotten the day's troubles. Suddenly, a wooden bucket full of cold water is mercilessly poured towards the young woman's bed. The blonde girl wakes up screaming in complete desperation as she feels the freezing water soak her entire body. The mage appears holding the bucket, wearing a dark cloak, and scoffs at her for trying to sleep amid the chaos. The girl shivers from the cold and looks at the mercenary with great fury, thinking he has completely lost his mind. But the boy pulls her by the arm, warning that they need to leave, while the young woman screams for him to let her go. He drags the blonde girl through the long corridors, passing by several maids who just watch in shock. The night sky is dominated by a huge full moon, illuminating the entire path outside the house. The two walk quickly along the remote trail, leaving the immense mansion behind in the darkness. At this, the little one trips over her own feet, falling on the dirt ground, and the silver-haired boy stops, watching her fall. The young woman raises her face with a look of pure hatred, wanting to know who this mere commoner thinks he is. The mage ignores her anger, warning that no one will hear her out in the woods, and decides to tell her a little secret. With a scary smile, the boy reveals he's not interested in teaching, and says he loves giving nobles a thrashing. Hearing those dark words, the girl's eyes widen as a deep fear takes over her body. The mercenary gestures calmly, explaining that being a teacher was just a great made-up excuse. He gets close to her face, maintaining his sinister expression, focused on destroying the little one's arrogance. To increase the terror, the young man slightly draws his sword, commenting on how he loves the screams of the wealthy. The girl scrambles backward, completely terrified, and questions if he thinks he'll get away with this crime. The mage draws his shining sword, showing a crazy smile, and warns that no one would believe her. He continues his psychological torment, saying he doesn't mind being taken down for her, since his life is worthless. His terrifying reflection shines on the blade as he claims her family would love to get rid of this burden. At that moment, the survival instinct hits hard, making the young blonde girl turn her back to flee. She runs desperately across the lawn, knowing she won't be able to reach the mansion through the open field. With this, the girl makes the risky decision to enter the dense forest, trying to lose the mercenary. The noble girl jumps over a fallen log with agility, using her knowledge of the area to plan a counter-attack. But suddenly, her escape is interrupted when she notices a strong orange glow illuminating the entire path. A gigantic burning fireball appears in the middle of the night, blocking any chance of the girl's escape. The silver-haired boy summons a huge fireball with his hands, illuminating the entire dark forest around them. The blonde girl is completely terrified to see that giant spell blocking her path. She wonders how a mere commoner can use a second-level spell of that size, but the mercenary just gives a scary smile and shows that he really enjoys her despair. Without wasting time, the young man hurls the gigantic flaming sphere towards the scared girl. The noble's eyes reflect the deadly flames, and she freezes in fear, sensing the end is near. In an act of pure desperation, the young woman throws herself onto the dirt ground, letting out a very sharp scream. With that, the magic explodes violently, creating a shockwave that throws her far away. The blonde girl swallows hard, sweating coldly as she looks back, still not believing she survived. The mage displays a devilish look with his glowing red eyes and scoffs, saying he missed. The dark night in the dense forest makes the atmosphere even more tense for the little fugitive. Without a second thought, the noble girl starts running through the woods again, trying to save her own life. She pants heavily, feeling exhaustion set in, but keeps looking back, fearing the man. The young woman uses all her agility to jump over a large fallen log in the middle of the dirt path. However, the lack of breath makes her trip and fall face first onto the ground in the darkness. The blonde girl groans in pain and tries to gather the strength to lift her trembling arms and continue fleeing. But suddenly, a blue magic arrow flies through the air at high speed, heading towards her. The bluish glow reflects on the terrified girl's face, who is completely paralyzed with shock. By a hair's breadth, she manages to dodge the several cutting arrows that stick hard into the dirt. The little one looks at the dangerous energy stuck in the ground, realizing she almost lost her life. Then the silver-haired boy appears, walking calmly with floating arrows, and praises her for the good dodge. The boy finds it very hard to believe that she spends all day locked in a room in the mansion. Ignoring his taunt, the noble girl turns her back and runs desperately into the woods again. The mercenary just gives a small, cynical smile, enjoying seeing his prey fight for its life. While running, the young woman wonders if she will be able to escape and feels she will soon be captured. At this, she furrows her brow and tries to come up with a quick plan to trick the relentless mage. But the silver-haired boy crouches near a puddle of water, activating a tracking spell through the ground. He stands up and stares at a small path between the large trees of the dark forest. The boy remembers seeing the scenery in her painting and concludes that the girl knows the place very well. He realizes that the little noble transferred the magical energy of nature to the canvas in a natural way. The mage narrows his red eyes, becoming quite intrigued by all the fugitive's hidden talent. Suddenly, the girl jumps from a tree, holding a rock to strike him on the head. But with frightening reflexes, the young warrior draws his sword in a fraction of a second. The boy bats the rock away in mid-air and lands a strong blow on the blonde girl, making her fall to the hard ground. The girl freezes in fear upon seeing the monstrous skill of the man who relentlessly pursues her. The mercenary approaches and praises her courage for attempting a counter-attack in the midst of fear. The little one trembles badly, breathing heavily and clutching her own dress, full of panic. With a very cold look, the silver-haired boy points out that the prey has no energy left to run from there. The warrior points his magic sword at the blonde girl's face and asks her to say her last words. But to his great surprise, the little one gives a faint smile, letting out an ironic and sad laugh. The girl states she will never ask for forgiveness and tells the boy to end it, proving her pride. The mage softens his expression and seriously asks the reason for her great obsession with noble lineage. The simple question hits the girl's heart, making her shoulders slump very sadly. With tears falling, the young woman confesses that without her nobility, she feels there is nothing left in her little life. She pounds the ground with great anger and pain, screaming desperately that she really wanted to be able to learn all magic. The girl lets out her frustration and yells that she tried her best to use the spells. The mercenary listens to the little girl's painful outburst, remaining silent with his face hidden by shadow. The noble girl cries in the muddy earth, suffering for being a great failure and feeling that she can never be good enough. Sobbing, she explains that using her pure blood status was the only way to endure all the failures. The sad girl cries helplessly in the dark forest, wondering what she really is besides a failure. The young mage remains silent, listening to the girl's confession. His sword then begins to glow with a powerful blue aura. Tears stream down the young woman's face as she accepts her fate. He raises the sword above her head and says he has heard enough. The girl cries in despair as the mage coldly says his goodbyes. In a swift motion, the blue blade comes down at high speed. The young woman squeezes her eyes shut, waiting for the final blow to land. She waits for the pain, but nothing happens, and only the sound of ice is heard. The sword strikes the ground and creates enormous ice crystals. The girl looks up, confused, and sees the crystals surrounding her. The mercenary surrounds her with an ice prison without harming her. The noble girl looks at her glowing hands and wonders if this is magic. The boy calmly sheathes his sword. He bows and praises her good work, asking for forgiveness for his rudeness. The little noble girl remains in shock, processing what just happened. The mage smiles and says it was just a manifestation, but she did very well. The young woman begins to sob and cry uncontrollably. With that, she finally breaks down in tears of pure happiness and relief. The mercenary silently watches the girl cry inside the circle of ice. The large full moon in the sky illuminates the dark and silent forest. The boy says she seems to be from the wild school, and the noble girl is confused. He explains that all schools are the same in their essence, but the way of learning is very different for each person. The young woman asks how he found out she was from the wild school. The mage reveals that he saw her great talent through her paintings. He explains that the girl was able to feel the magical power of nature, and she transferred all that great energy directly onto the canvas. The little noble's eyes widen, completely shocked by the revelation. The young man says she managed to manifest magic, but still has a lot to learn. He warns that starting tomorrow, he will teach her to manifest magic naturally. At this, the girl calls the boy Derek in a very soft tone of voice. She crosses her arms and shyly thanks him for his great help. The mercenary remains silent for a moment, not knowing how to react. He then asks if they can go now, and the young woman agrees to follow him. The boy praises the sunset painting, saying she completed it well. A large window illuminates the luxurious room with the morning sunlight. The next day, the noble girl wakes up in her bed, looking much more energetic. She raises her hand and manages to summon a small blue magical aura. The girl observes the energy with a very determined and focused look, but the small magic dissipates, and she realizes the task will not be easy. A maid walks down the hallway carrying a basket of dirty laundry. Suddenly, the young noble opens the door, and the servant screams in fright. The girl uses her magic and throws all the water from the bucket upwards, but she loses control, and all the water falls on her dress. The maid is terrified, thinking she will be blamed for the accident. The little noble makes a very serious face, and the maid prepares for the worst. The servant throws herself on the floor, desperately begging for forgiveness. But the young woman just tells the woman to be more careful next time. The maid is confused, wondering why she wasn't struck by the noble. Other servants see the scene and comment on the girl's change. Our protagonist sleeps peacefully in his luxurious bed in the mansion, but he is suddenly awakened by someone shouting and pounding on the door. The boy gets up sleepily and rubs his eyes, wanting to know what is happening. The noble girl demands that the mage teach her to control her magical power right now. The old butler is shocked to hear that the young woman managed to manifest magic. The blonde girl reminds him that he promised to teach her today and tells the boy to hurry up. The mage then asks the girl to come back in the afternoon for her lesson. The butler gets emotional seeing the young woman's change as she smirks. The girl shouts furiously, banging on the door and telling him to open it immediately. She continues to shout that she wants her lesson now, but the mage ignores her. The scene cuts to the huge mansion, being illuminated by the morning sun. A man walks through the mansion's corridors with firm and serious steps. Two maids gossip about the little noble not having broken any plates. The older brother overhears the servants commenting that the young woman used magic. The nobleman stops walking in the hallway, shocked by the news he just heard. With that, he turns around and asks the maids to repeat the gossip. The Duke is in his office, writing a letter with a quill. The brothers tell their father that the noble girl manifested magic for the first time. Upon hearing the news, the Duke is very relieved with his daughter's progress, but the older brother says it's too early to jump to conclusions. The blonde one gets furious with his brother's attitude and tells him to praise the girl. The Duke adjusts his glasses and silently observes his son's argument. The dark-haired one remembers that the little one caused a lot of trouble for the whole family. The nobleman remains silent, just listening to his son's discussion. The scene cuts to the clear blue sky, with some white clouds passing by. The little noble is sitting on the bed, hugging her knees and pouting. The mage approaches and asks if the girl is upset about something. The noble girl turns her face and says she's not upset, but very angry. The boy says that pouting won't change her current situation. The young woman repeats that she is not pouting, and that he is completely mistaken. The mage says that everything has its order, and that she can be as angry as she wants. The noble girl explodes with anger and shouts that she is very angry with the teacher. The mercenary just stares at her in silence without showing any reaction. The girl gives up and says she will pretend to be just pouting for now. The silver-haired boy sits in a chair to begin the magic lesson. He warns her not to get too excited and that he speaks from experience. The girl stands up and grumbles that the boring magic teacher has arrived. The mage makes a scary face and asks if she prefers a less boring method. The noble girl remembers the previous night and becomes afraid of the teacher. With that, the young woman sits down quickly and agrees to have the lesson normally. The boy explains that they will practice manifesting magical power. He says the wild school is perfect for self-learning and freedom. The mage says the young woman is very well suited for the wild school, and she gets confused. He explains that her nature matches well with the school, and that she is talented. The word talent echoes in the little noble's mind with great force. The girl blushes and asks if she really has any talent. The boy confirms, and the noble girl asks if she is some kind of genius. He explains that talent and genius are completely different things. Outside, the older brother watches the lesson, wondering what will come of it. The nobleman has an expression of pure discontent with the situation. The next day, the large mansion is illuminated by the strong morning sun. The noble girl invades the mage's room and says she can't control the magic. The next day, she bothers him during a meal with her freezing aura. On another day, she runs after him, saying that the feeling of the magic is strange. The girl finally finds the boy reading under a tree in the field. She scolds him for not being in the annex and questions him about the magic book. The boy calmly replies that the book was lent to him to study. The young woman gets annoyed and tells the tutor to go see the magic she released. In one of the rooms, the blonde brother stares out the window, looking very thoughtful. Suddenly, the door to the large room is opened by someone arriving. The silver-haired boy enters, and the nobleman invites him to sit and talk for a bit. The two sit down for tea, and the blonde man asks how his sister is doing. The mercenary says she has progressed, but it will still take time to master everything. The nobleman understands and warns that their mother will return next week. He warns that the nobility doesn't like commoners in important positions. The boy says he will remember that and asks if the conversation is over. The blonde man remains silent for a moment before continuing to speak. He says that as the next head of the family, he needs to be honest with everyone. The nobleman philosophizes about how difficult it is to understand people's hearts. But the young mage cuts him off and asks him to get straight to the point. The blonde man then raises his fist, showing all his great determination. He complains that his sister doesn't play with him anymore and only cares about the tutor. The silver-haired boy stares at him with an expression of pure boredom and disinterest. The nobleman fondly recalls when the young woman called him an angel when she was a child. He asks the boy for help in winning his sister's heart again. At this, the noble girl shouts the mercenary's name, proving her brother's point. The blonde man changes the subject and shows something he learned to make from a servant. He shows a bizarre rag doll and asks if his sister will like it. The mage stares at the doll and asks if the nobleman wants to curse someone. The brother cries and says the mercenary is completely useless for this. The scene cuts, again showing the facade of the huge and luxurious mansion. The young man is greeted by an elderly woman who says she has heard a lot about him. She says they have found a very capable and talented magic teacher. The woman introduces herself as Morella and asks him to be a gift to her family. The boy replies coldly that he does not belong to any noble family. The elderly woman is very confused by the young mage's unexpected response. The mercenary then reveals with a smile that he is just a commoner. Morella is completely shocked to discover the boy's origin. The story now picks back up in a giant mansion that seems to belong to a very rich and important family. Inside the house, a white-haired boy is greeted by an older lady who is waiting for him. With a smile, she says that they finally found a magic teacher who is very good at what he does. The woman introduces herself as Mariella and offers to send some gifts to the boy, but the boy immediately replies that he isn't part of any specific family or house. The lady looks confused and immediately asks him to explain himself a little better. The young man then shows his red eyes and reveals to her that he is actually just a commoner. Mariella is completely in shock when she discovers the whole truth about the boy's origin. The scene then goes back 1 week in the past, right in front of that same fancy and very large mansion. A girl tells the boy named Derek that it was a great idea to have brought him to that place. She says she'll have to leave, but will leave her younger sister in the teacher's care. The white-haired young man just agrees with the woman with a very serious and focused look on what's about to happen. Out of nowhere, a big guy hugs him and tells the boy to try to look a little more excited about everything. They say goodbye to the carriage and ask the boy to finish all his work as quickly as possible. Left alone, the boy stares at the huge mansion as the carriage slowly drives away. Suddenly, the girl remembers something very important that she totally forgot to mention. She warns that her mother will be back next week and that she forgot to give that heads up before. The man next to her asks why that would be something that needs advance notice. The girl's face changes completely just by starting to talk a little about her mother to the man. She describes her mother as if she were the most intense and craziest person in the entire world. Back in the present, Mariella is yelling, all ticked off, at her husband inside the house's office. The man calmly asks his wife to try to lower her tone of voice a bit when talking to him, but she doesn't stop yelling and says the whole problem is their youngest daughter, named Diella. Her husband then replies that he's not a big fan of the idea of hiring commoners either. He remembers that all the other teachers who had noble families simply gave up on the girl. The guy says it's not easy to find a good teacher, and that Iceland was the one who recommended the kid. But the woman insists that there are some minimum qualifications to get this job. She then suggests that her brother, named Flam, should come to teach the girl instead of the commoner. Her husband asks if she's serious about taking a general and turning him into a simple tutor. The lady yells back, saying that their social circle is also a very complicated war. She says a teacher is like a business card and a commoner would humiliate the whole family. At that moment, the office door opens, making a very loud noise and drawing attention. A young blonde man enters the room and asks his mother to calm down and stop fighting with his father. Mariella tells her son Valerian to stay out of the drama, as the matter at hand is very serious. Out of nowhere, another young man enters, saying that the problem there is the qualification of the new teacher. The mother smiles at this other son and calls him Raid, with a face full of pride. Reed says that a commoner becoming a teacher isn't normal, but it's not exactly a problem either. He then offers to personally test Derek's skills to see if the guy is any good. His father interrupts him on the spot saying that the boy is actually a real and very strong mage. The young noble stares at his father with a very serious expression and thinks about what he's going to do. Then he suggests that instead of testing the teacher, they should test the young student, Delilah. His blonde brother is very confused, unable to understand the logic behind this idea. Reg explains that if the teacher is really good, his student should also be excellent. The father of the family remains silent, just listening to his son's plan without saying a single word. Then the young noble leaves the room, very determined to go ahead with his plan to test his younger sister. Valerian goes after him, asking why he wants a magic duel with his own sister so badly. The brother asks if he really believes that Delilah has changed and is no longer the same as before. The blonde man insists that she is their only sister and that it's their duty to always protect the girl. Reg just lets out a mocking laugh when he hears the word blood being used in their conversation. He yells that this blood will destroy the family and her debit will be the end of everything for them. With a very serious look, the blonde man asks if that's how his brother really feels. Reg replies that Delilah has crossed all the lines and should be locked up in the annex forever. The older brother just looks at him in silence with a very serious expression on his face. Very determined, the dark-haired boy turns his back and leaves the office without looking back. Outside, a little bird calmly watches all the movement in that huge mansion. Suddenly, the young blonde girl bursts into the teacher's room, shouting his name loudly and in a hurry. Reading a book, he asks what's going on for her to arrive shouting so early in the morning. The girl throws a scroll on his table with the official notice about the magic duel that's going to happen. She then warns that if she loses this magic fight, he will be fired from his job on the spot. The teacher replies that Reg is a 1-star mage and that it will be very difficult to beat him. In a rage, the girl yells that's all he has to say about the risk of being fired. The boy explains that he is a mercenary and that he just needs to finish the job he was hired for. Very calmly, he says that he has already received a payment that was more than enough for the service. The young noble is completely shocked and asks him if he's being serious about all this. A week later, a flag with a giant eagle flaps in the strong wind high up in the sky. A lot of people gather in a huge arena to watch the confrontation that is about to happen. The father of the family arrives at the place with his wife and a bunch of other important nobles. He finds the white-haired teacher and says that he finally decided to show his face. The boy bows with great respect in front of the family's leader, who is right there in front of him. The older noble notices that the young man doesn't seem nervous at all about the fight that's about to start. Sitting in his place, he thinks that this boy is not the type to be easily underestimated. Firm footsteps echo through the arena as one of the fighters begins to approach. With a flowing cape, the girl's brother walks with a super confident look to the center of the arena. He thinks that this isn't a simple duel and that he needs to crush Delilah no matter what. Going up the stairs, the noble vows that he will make his sister regret everything she did in the past. With her boots, the young blonde girl also walks towards the battlefield to face her brother. Wearing a red hood, she faces her opponent with a very determined look for the combat. The scene goes back to the girl asking if the teacher really doesn't mind being fired. He explains that her mana is stable and that soon she will be using 1-star magic as well. The master says she was born with the blood of the Duplain family, and that's why she is very strong. The boy says that his school focuses much more on self-study than on teaching others. With tear-filled eyes, she yells, asking why he only told her this now. The white-haired teacher remains silent, just looking at her without saying a single word. The young woman admits with her head down that she knows she is not a very good student at learning things. Crying, she begs to continue learning from him because she doesn't want any other teacher. With his back turned, the boy just listens to the desperate outburst his student is making. Putting on his gloves, he says he doesn't know the rules of duels among the nobles of that place. With a smile, he offers to teach her how to win and asks if she really wants that. A memory shows people saying that the young woman didn't have a single drop of mana in her body. Everyone made fun of her, saying she was a great disgrace to her noble family. With tears and a look of anger, The girl replies that yes, she wants to win with all her might. Back in the arena, it's said that she is not there as Raig's sister or anything like that, and not even as the youngest of the family, but as a completely different and stronger person. She is there only as Derek's disciple, and also as a true mage ready to fight. The Duplain family flag waves in the blue sky high above the duel arena, where everything will go down. In the arena, the young woman in the red hood faces her older brother, who is now far away from her. A man with a mustache coughs to get the attention of everyone present to watch. He announces that the rules of the duel will be the same as the famous Hall of Ebelstein for everyone. With a confident look, Raig says they can start the fight right now without any delay. The girl stares at him up close, her eyes filled with determination to win that combat. We see a green pendant that activates before a fatal blow and manages to stop the enemy's magic. With this, the white-haired teacher notes the high cost and that the duel must end very quickly. In the arena, the cocky brother raises his hand and begins to chant a very powerful wind spell. Meanwhile, the young woman in the red hood just watches the strong winds with a very serious face. The boy then concentrates all the magical energy in the palm of his hand, creating a shining vortex. With a very confident look, he warns that his opponent will have to go back to isolation. At this, the noble launches a giant gust of wind with all his strength towards the little girl. The swift attack cuts through the air and rushes forward to hit the little mage right in the chest. But the student doesn't back down one bit and keeps her eyes fully focused on the enemy's magic. With great agility, the girl ducks and manages to dodge the wind blade by passing underneath it. The dark-haired boy gets very annoyed to see that she dared to dodge his powerful attack. Completely irritated, he moves his arm and casts another quick spell towards the little girl. The young woman in the red cape slides across the ground and manages to dodge another strong blow from her rival. Even under pressure, she remains super focused and analyzes every move of her opponent in the fight. In the audience, the master notices that she uses a lot of energy to dodge and is still new to combat. Back in the arena, a large wind blade hits with full force and shatters an ice wall. The girl raises huge blocks of ice from the ground using only the raw power of her magic. Her brother scoffs at the defense, thinking that a cheap trick would never stop his power. Then he raises his hand and creates several shining wind spheres for a big attack. Very confident, the mage swears he will crush this little defensive trick of hers once and for all. He fires all the magic spheres with full force against the little girl's ice barrier. A memory shows the master explaining that mercenary fights focus only on the final victory. The breathless student listens attentively that even if she wins, she might still end up being criticized. The white-haired man then asks if she is really willing to use dirty tactics to win this duel. With eyes full of determination, the apprentice shouts loudly that she accepts the plan without a second thought. Back in the present, the hooded girl faces her opponent with a relentless and fearless look. Several powerful wind gusts fall from the sky as the girl runs quickly to protect herself. Once again, the young mage ducks and narrowly misses an air blade that could have been fatal. The narrator explains that good warriors always win, even with a great disadvantage in magical power. The irritated young man prepares another blow, while it's said that mercenaries fight to take someone down, not for honor. The little girl uses her magic on the ground to slide, as controlling the battlefield is essential. She then stops the movement with style and proves she will do anything to achieve victory. A huge wind blade approaches the girl's back, showing that mistakes must be dealt with. Suddenly, a giant ice pillar breaks through the ground and defends the girl from that deadly attack. Out of breath, the little girl rests her hands on the ice barrier and struggles to withstand the blow. The opponent smiles, saying the fight is over, and the student's eyes widen in fear. With no way out, a quick spell curves around the ice and ends up hitting the young apprentice dead-on. A cloud of dust and debris fills the area right after the strong impact of the wind. In the audience, the white-haired teacher continues to watch the explosion, maintaining the utmost calm. The girl's mother stands up from her chair, completely desperate, and screams her daughter's name. The father also stands up, startled, while the lady tells the referee to stop the dangerous fight at once. But the noble leader tells his wife to sit down. because that battle is not over yet. The woman says her daughter was hit, but her husband explains that the protection necklace didn't even activate. The bearded man becomes very thoughtful as he tries to understand what just happened down there. He then shifts his gaze to the tutor and notices that the white-haired boy remains seated and relaxed. The patriarch realizes that the master is not afraid and wonders if the boy had already predicted this. Amidst the dust, the opponent advances, walking, and seems very confused by the result of the blow. He knows the magic hit and doesn't understand why the defense failed, and he wonders where she is. Walking through the ice to Briss, the mage finally notices something very strange on the ground. The wooden plank near his boot begins to crack with a trembling sound coming from below. At this, a giant ice pillar breaks through the floor and suddenly throws the opponent high into the air. The mage lands awkwardly, sliding across the arena while trying to balance himself with a frightened look. Completely ticked off, the young man realizes his opponent is attacking from hiding under the stage. With this, he looks at the referee, remembering that the rules state leaving the arena is an instant loss. But the mustached man just shakes his head, showing that the girl didn't break any rules. The boy then understands that the area below doesn't count as being outside and thinks it's a dirty trick of hers. At that exact moment, the noble hears a strange noise and looks down, fully on alert. Another huge ice spike pierces the wood, forcing him to jump back quickly to save himself. Soon, several other ice spikes begin to emerge from the entire arena, making the mage flee. Frustrated, the young man grumbles that it's very difficult to hit the student, since he can't see anything. Leaping through the air, the warrior complains that there isn't a single shred of noble etiquette in this fight. Looking at the large dark hole in the floor, he calls his sister's name, with a lot of anger in his voice. Down below, the red-hooded apprentice stares back at her opponent with a very intimidating look. The little mage's eyes shine brightly, proving that she is willing to do anything. Surprised, the mage remembers seeing that same calm and dark look somewhere else a while ago. Turning his head slightly, the dark-haired boy finally understands whose influence this is. With this, he looks directly at the white-haired tutor, certain that this strategy came from him. The noble then grabs his own cloak, adopting a much more serious posture to continue the fight. Determined, the mage takes off his heavy cape and throws it away, becoming lighter in the middle of the ice field. Extending his hand forward, he warns that he's going all in on this little game of dirty strategies. A powerful magical aura begins to gather around the young man in the middle of that destroyed arena. In the stands, the girl's mother is shocked to see her daughter getting dirty on that filthy floor. The lady demands the duel be stopped, but the father asks for calm, as the girl hasn't broken any event rules. The bearded patriarch is very intrigued by his daughter's intelligence and decides to watch a little longer. Hiding in the dark hole, the young apprentice takes a deep breath while leaning on an ice pillar. Maintaining full focus, the little mage uses all her senses to try to predict the next attack. Observing the magical dust falling through the cracks, she manages to track the rival's entire mana flow. On the surface, the opponent begins to recite a powerful spell with a threatening look at the ground. But before finishing the spell, an ice spike pierces the floor right at his foot and stops the casting. Shaking with rage, the noble realizes his opponent cunningly attacks whenever he tries to cast. Squinting his eyes, the mage decides he needs to change his fighting style if he wants to get her out of there. A top-down view shows the warrior standing in the middle of the destruction near a flagpole. Hidden below, the little apprentice notices that the energy flow from above has suddenly stopped. A little confused, the girl lifts her face and tries to guess what the noble's next move will be. Outside, the combat referee observes the situation, sweating nervously, and senses something bad is about to happen. At that moment, the young opponent makes an incredibly high jump and hangs onto the arena's flagpole. Stuck up there, the warrior is confident the girl can't find him, but this prevents him from casting. So the mage points his finger down, creating a giant blue spell to destroy everything without reciting it. With a swift movement, he fires a large blast of blue light that powerfully destroys the arena. The white-haired master continues to observe the impact with a very calm and serene posture. The brutal energy hits the stone base of the flagpole head-on, causing cracks all over. With the base destroyed, the giant metal structure comes completely loose and begins to fall from the sky. Using the falling pillar for support, the young warrior gains momentum and advances towards the ground. The large structure brutally hits the wooden stage, creating a giant dust explosion. Seeing all the insane destruction, the lady panics and screams her son's name in desperation. In the midst of that cloud of dirt, the opponent lands on the destroyed ground in an agile and safe manner. Covering his mouth because of the fog, the noble keeps a sharp eye out to find the little apprentice. Through the large dark cloud, he can see the silhouette of the little girl trying to run away. Without losing a second, the warrior extends his hands, forming a shining blue magic arrow. With a loud noise, the swift attack cuts through the air, tearing through the dust straight towards the fleeing target. The blue magic arrow rapidly approaches the frightened eye of the little running mage, but with an impressive reflex, the little girl throws herself backward, managing to dodge the attack. At this, the mage extends his hand, which shines brightly with a very powerful and concentrated blue energy. The apprentice's eyes widen as she realizes the immense danger that was about to come her way. Then, a giant blue magic spear forms in the air, ready to completely destroy its target. Utterly terrified, the girl stares at that high-level magic being created right in front of her. With that, the noble fires the attack, forcing the girl to run desperately through the dust. The warrior watches her escape, thinking that the short distance would give him a great advantage, but surprisingly, the young woman charges forward and manages to knock her own brother to the ground. The little maid shows a fierce face, proving she will fight to the end for her great victory. Thrown to the ground, the boy is in shock, feeling the strong impact of that unexpected blow. Panting heavily, the noble clutches his chest, feeling pain after being knocked down by the student. At that moment, the little girl quickly grabs a handful of sand from the destroyed arena floor. Without a second thought, she throws all that dirt directly in her opponent's face on the ground. The warrior closes his eyes in agony as the dust temporarily blinds his vision. While the boy tries to clear his eyes, the apprentice takes the opportunity to leap far away from the mess. In a rage, the noble wonders if the girl is using such low tricks because she's out of mana. He realizes she is fighting with all her might, even knowing that victory is almost impossible. With a serious look, the warrior decides he will use all his strength to face his sister now. The scene cuts, showing the sun shining brightly in the blue sky above the combat site. Back in the arena, the little mage carefully watches her opponent, trying to get up from the ground. Bleeding and tired, the little girl fixes her hair, maintaining a completely unshackable posture. A little bit of red liquid runs down the student's chin, showing the price of fighting a strong mage. A drop of red ink falls into a bucket, creating a visual metaphor in the little girl's mind. The memory explains that magical energy is like ink, and the spell is like the paintbrush. The brush makes a large red stroke, showing how magic must be shaped with great precision. In the past, the white-haired master taught the student to focus her magical energy by painting the starry sky. With a calm voice, the white-haired teacher defines this delicate process as true magic. The little girl listens to the advice, amazed, finally understanding how to control all her power. Together, they watched the stroke of blue light, shining beautifully in the darkness of that calm night. Back in the present, the young woman closes her eyes and concentrates hard on her tutor's teachings. At this, a spectacular blue aura begins to envelop the little apprentice's entire body in that arena. She feels the strong energy spinning through her fingertips as she prepares her counter-attack. The intense glow in the mage's hand shows that she has finally managed to channel all her power. With illuminated eyes, the little girl decides she will paint a beautiful picture using that strength. Then a large magic circle forms under her feet, creating several floating ice lances. In the audience, the combat referee breaks into a cold sweat upon recognizing the immense power of that spell. The lady is startled to realize her youngest daughter is about to use first-level magic. The opposing brother also sweats, noticing that the girl has completely surpassed his expectations. Holding one of the frozen lances, the little warrior faces her opponent relentlessly. Without wasting time, the warrior extends his arm, creating a very violent blue wind spell. Confident, the noble asserts that he will always be one step ahead of the student, firing several arrows. He is absolutely certain that his blow will be much faster and will secure the final victory. But the young apprentice does not back down and launches all her ice spikes with maximum force against him. The mage's eyes widen as he sees the girl's lances piercing and nullifying his entire spell. One of the frozen spikes hits violently, creating a very bright flash of light in that arena. A very loud explosion occurs on the stage, raising a giant cloud of energy and also smoke. Seeing the terrifying scene, the little girl's mother screams in panic, fearing for her daughter's life. In the midst of all the dust and destruction, a large blue magic bubble appears unexpectedly. The protection shield shines intensely, ensuring that someone survived the very brutal impact. Breathless, the dark-haired boy tries to catch his breath after the strong impact of that magic. On the other side, the little mage also breathes heavily, her face all bruised up. At this, the white-haired master observes the whole situation, maintaining a very serious and concentrated look. A memory from 1 year ago shows a small bird's nest with 3 little chicks inside. The scene reveals the mother bird feeding her chicks in the tree near a large window. Meanwhile, the great patriarch walks through the corridors accompanied by his trusted butler. The aide with glasses informs him about a letter received from another very important noble family. Then the head of the house peeks through the crack of the door, seeing his youngest daughter sitting all alone. The little girl had an empty and very sad look directed towards the light of the large bedroom window. Seeing this, the bearded man remains silent, showing a lot of concern for that girl. Back in the present, the young apprentice displays several bruises on her head after the violent blow. As the dust settles, the blue magical barrier around the girl begins to slowly dissipate. At that moment, the little mage realizes that the protection from her necklace has finally activated. Thrown to the ground, the noble warrior tries to get up while staring at his opponent from a distance now. In the audience, the white-haired teacher closes his eyes, understanding the result of that great confrontation. The white-haired boy admits in his mind that his student ended up losing the big fight in the end. Completely frustrated, the little girl breaks down in tears and begins to cry loudly in the middle of the arena. From high up on the balcony, the father watches his 2 children facing each other on the destroyed field. But the mother turns to her husband, completely furious, asking what kind of crazy duel that was. Down below, the little apprentice continues to wipe her tears, very upset with everything. With that, the family leader listens to his wife's complaints, maintaining his very serious pose. A memory shows the eldest son dressed in a full suit of the family's knight armor. The patriarch praises the warrior, saying that his eyes remind him a lot of his own father's. The bearded man finishes by saying that they are eyes full of great ambition and also great pride. Returning to the present, the little girl tries to hide her face, crying from pure frustration with everything. The older noble stares at the girl, noticing a big change in his youngest daughter's attitude. At this, the father notices that the girl's gaze has improved a lot as the maids approach her. Several servants surround the injured young woman, showing great concern for the little girl's health. One of the maids tries to touch her, and at that moment, the little mage slaps her hand away forcefully. Refusing help, the little girl turns and goes back to facing her brother in the middle of that whole arena. The dark-haired boy is surprised and awkward in the face of his younger sister's determination. Scratching the back of his neck, the warrior finally gives in and praises the little apprentice's excellent work. But the girl ignores the compliment and lowers her head, walking sadly with the local maids. Suddenly, the hooded girl stops, walking upon spotting a familiar person in her path. The young woman stops right in front of her white-haired teacher, who is still sitting on the wooden bench. The master watches her in silence, keeping his deep red eyes focused only on the girl. Completely ashamed, the student can't face the boy and looks away very sadly. With tears streaming down, she covers her eyes, suffering for not having achieved the victory she wanted. Clenching her own dress tightly, the girl finally confesses to him that she lost. With her face all wet with tears, the little apprentice apologizes to her great master. The white-haired young man continues to stand there, just listening to the little girl's desperate crying. Then the tutor calmly stands up from the wooden bench to comfort his crying student. Placing his hands on her shoulders, the boy gently says that there's no problem at all with losing. The teacher advises the little girl to overcome this frustration to become even stronger. Hearing those beautiful words, the young woman lifts her tearful gaze, feeling much more comforted. With that, the girl can't hold it in and starts crying even louder in front of her great mentor. The maids watch the scene, shocked by the young woman wailing in the middle of the courtyard with her teacher. At that instant, quick footsteps approach, revealing the luxurious green dress of the great matriarch. The older woman walks hurriedly through the garden, calling her youngest daughter's name, very worried. Kneeling on the ground, the mother hugs the little girl, saying she must have suffered a lot in the fight. The matriarch hugs the injured little girl, telling her that everything is okay and that she should get treated. Still shedding tears, the little apprentice just agrees with her mother, very sad about the defeat. With that, the woman wipes her tears as the maids take the young warrior to be cared for. At this, the lady turns, wiping her face with a handkerchief, preparing to speak with the teacher. The master in the dark cloak stands still, just waiting for what that furious woman has to say. With firm steps, the matriarch walks across the lawn to demand an explanation about that combat. The white-haired young man watches her with his red eyes, maintaining a very serene expression. Completely irritated, she yells, calling the boy trash and questioning if he has any idea what he's done. The boy just listens to the lady say, the teaching powerful magic in that way is not a good thing. She continues to curse the mentor, stating that he stained her youngest's honor with dirty tricks. The white-haired man looks away, feeling the weight of the noble woman's words, criticizing his vulgar tactics. Very worked up, the woman yells that there is a world that a commoner like him would never understand. She says that dignity must be protected as the family leader calmly approaches. Suddenly, the matriarch's eyes widen in surprise upon hearing her husband scolding her in the garden. Holding his wife's arm, the bearded man asks if she doesn't notice who is being vulgar there. Very confused, the lady justifies her attitude by saying the mentor is nothing more than a mere commoner. The leader agrees with the boy's origin, but reminds her that he is still his daughter's great master. The white-haired boy listens to the defense in silence, noticing that this man is very different. Turning to the tutor, the patriarch apologizes, claiming that everyone loves their children in their own way. The young mercenary just focuses his red eyes on that nobleman without saying a single word. At this, the head of the house asks the boy to accompany him to the room, as they need to talk alone. The matriarch watches the two walk away through the large mansion's garden, still in shock. Holding her own face, the woman clenches her teeth, irritated for not understanding her husband's action. In the luxurious room, the great family leader's quill is dipped in ink for a new document. Sitting at his desk, the bearded man states that he needs to give a worthy reward to the teacher. The patriarch then offers the greatest relic for a commoner, wanting to give a third-level spell. The young mercenary's eyes widen, getting a little shocked by the precision of that good offer. In his thoughts, the white-haired man praises the nobleman's wisdom, noting the greatness of a fifth-level mage. Knowing he can't waste the chance, the red-eyed boy accepts the offer on the spot. The nobleman warns that the tutor did a good job, but high society demands a much higher level. But the white-haired man tries to convince the man that the girl got the hang of it and will improve quickly. The patriarch interrupts him, revealing that his daughter doesn't just need an instructor, but a master. With that, he signs the paper, showing that the decision to dismiss the great mercenary has already been made. Clasping his hands, the bearded man says the commoner has ambitions he should never dream of having. He explains that this greatly offends the nobility and that he is only ignoring the facts, because it's him. The boy listens to everything silently, realizing that the Duke knows he seeks even stronger spells. While signing the papers, the head of the house states that this is why the tutor cannot stay. The older noble looks intently at the boy, asking if he was already prepared to leave. Relaxed in the armchair, the young man confirms everything while the noble warns that he understands this great ambition. The patriarch then asks the young man to train the girl, just a little more before collecting his reward. The family leader asks again if the mercenary wants to obtain the third-level magic at once. With an intense glow in his red eyes, the young man doesn't think twice and accepts the valuable proposal. Soon after the agreement, the huge doors of the luxurious library open, revealing many mysteries. The cloaked boy walks, very fascinated, through the corridors full of rare books and huge shelves. With great curiosity, he pulls a heavy ancient grimoire from the shelf to inspect it. Upon opening the book, the mercenary analyzes the large magic circles engraved on those old pages. The boy dives into reading, completely focused on absorbing the mysterious power contained within. He is dazzled by the quality of the magic, finding the power of the family's spells incredible. The tutor reflects that many would harm others for weak spells, and here, everything is third level and up. Without wasting any more time, the boy flips through the grimoire, focused on getting stronger and stronger with the books. Thoughtfully, the white-haired tutor thinks that these valuable books are great reasons to stay. In the kitchen, the father drinks from his wooden mug, warning that the girl's mother would soon cause a fuss. The scene quickly cuts to two white doves flying freely on a beautiful, clear sky day. In the courtyard, the little apprentice in red puts her hands on her hips, very proud and confident. Very happy, she shows off to the white-haired master, saying she has finally achieved the title of mage. The boy flips through his book at the table, responding seriously that she barely used that magic in a fight. Surprised by the boring attitude, the girl scratches her head, realizing that pleasing her mentor is not easy. With a sidelong glance, the teacher remembers that the little girl was crying buckets on the day of the duel. Embarrassed, the little apprentice tries to play it off, making excuses, saying that dust just got in her eye. Pouting, the student turns her face, saying her father should have told her sooner about not firing the tutor. The white-haired master closes his calm grimoire, announcing that it's time to focus on the new difficult spells. Excited, the girl approaches eagerly, wanting to learn the attacks he planned to teach. Calmly, he remembers that it's rare to learn magic so quickly since the Great Awakening. The student suggests new and dangerous spells, like her brother's wind blade or the arrows. Thoughtfully, the girl says she liked the ice spear, while the tutor insists on going back to basics. Completely confused, the little girl's eyes widen, asking why they wouldn't focus on attack. Seriously, the white-haired master argues that having a good foundation is extremely fundamental for every mage. Sighing, the mercenary tries to give a good example of how to control mana in its purest state. The little girl pouts, disappointed for not learning anything explosive right away like before. She looks at the master with curiosity, noticing that the white-haired man is focused on analyzing her face. Embarrassed, the girl crosses her arms and asks if there's something wrong with her bruised face. Relaxed with his hand on his chin, he just says it's fascinating how obedient she can be. Furious, the girl turns her face to the side, yelling that she has always paid attention to everything from the beginning. The memory of the past strikes, with the young apprentice pouring a giant bucket of water on the mentor. Calmer, the white-haired young man remembers, laughing, that she did that exact thing twice in a row. Flustered, the little girl tries to hide her guilt, while the master smiles at the bad memories. Forcing a laugh, the student tries to change the subject, yelling about how nice the weather was for training. The young red-eyed mercenary lets out a subtle smile at the whole funny scene. Later, the full moon shines in the dark sky, illuminating the huge mansion of the rich family at night. On the grass field, the little mage falls, panting, seeming exhausted from all that night training. The master watches the girl collapsed on the ground with a tired expression. Remembering she would be busy, kneeling, the white-haired boy says the student will have many exhaustive lessons, and she agrees. Holding her head, the little warrior worriedly remembers the long list of arts for nobles. The young teacher doesn't understand, and thinks it's wonderful that she has the chance to receive a lesson. Desperate, the student can't handle the number of silly subjects like sewing or even geography. With a fixed gaze, the master says that's how her older sister became the jewel by learning like this. Sitting on the grass talking, they watch the beautiful stars as the girl questions her time. Calmly, the mentor assures her that he has strong support from the leader and no one would dare fire him easily. With a cynical little smile, the little girl recalls that her mother won't forgive them for the big mess. The master gets confused, and the student emphasizes that if he continues teaching barbaric things, he would be reprimanded. Shaken, he hears that the fights don't seem like the actions of civilized people and realizes his own mistake. Sighing, the white-haired man agrees but admits he trained in his practical way without much fuss. With a dark look, the teacher says that silencing the angry matriarch is not that difficult. Her eyes widening in panic, the little apprentice doesn't understand her dangerous mentor's words. The next morning, the sun rises again behind the large towers of the family's luxurious castle. Dressed in green, the older lady walks tensely in the courtyard, surrounded by maids. In her thoughts, the matriarch remembers with great anger the malicious look and the tutor's fake smile. She fears the boy will teach his worst cruel instincts to her beloved daughter right under her nose. The mother's nightmare comes true with the girl breaking down the doors, showing off a wild pig. Desperate, the woman puts her hand to her forehead, lamenting the terrible, dirty future of the young little princess. At this, the maids close the door while the matriarch thinks about what that commoner can teach. With her hand on her forehead, the lady gets very frustrated and decides she needs to find a way out now. Suddenly, the woman turns very surprised upon hearing the sweet voice of her beloved daughter calling her. With that, the lady gives a warm smile to her youngest, acting very affectionately. Smiling emotionally, the woman declares how much she loves to see her little girl smiling in her arms. But soon the matriarch's expression changes, and she falls into a complete, very thoughtful silence. At that moment, the noble glances at her daughter from the side, noticing that something is very different about her. Wearing a beautiful blue dress, the girl smiles politely, asking if her mother slept very well. Totally shocked by so much politeness, the matriarch's eyes widen, unable to even react. Calmly, the young woman explains that she would love to talk, but unfortunately has a piano lesson right now. Still processing everything, the lady stammers a lot and just agrees with her little girl. Very politely, the young apprentice makes an elegant curtsy, announcing that she is already on her way out. Very confused, the woman raises her hand, asking if the etiquette lessons had already started. Smiling confidently, the student confirms everything and thanks her for her mother's enormous care. Completely speechless, the lady just swallows hard and tells her daughter to go to her study. Seen from above, the little girl walks through the courtyard, leaving her mother and the maids with their mouths wide open. The shock is so great that one of the maids ends up dropping all her things on the ground. Gently, the little mage turns and asks with a beautiful smile if the maid got hurt. The poor maid gets very nervous and stammers nonstop when answering the young noble lady. With that, the girl in the blue dress leaves while the matriarch watches her in silence from a distance. Over in the rich district, we see an angel statue, and they say the Rosea Hall is full of people laughing. At this, there's a cup of tea on the table, while someone comments that Miss Iceland was very worried. Then the dark-haired girl gets startled and covers her mouth, saying she didn't mean to worry anyone before. Having tea with her friend, the dark-haired girl gives a relieved smile, saying she has already solved her problems. Then the redhead smiles casually and comments on the gossip about her friend looking for a guy from outside the noble circle. With that, the rich girl closes her eyes, laughing, and explains she was looking for a magic tutor for her sister. Completely confused, the red-haired girl wonders about the level of the master she was looking for. Right at that moment, another silver-haired girl joins the conversation, wanting to know more about this younger sister. The redhead agrees, remembering she saw the girl a short time ago and noticed she had become a very polite young lady. Very excited, the dark-haired girl praises her younger sister's chick posture and says the girl already uses level 1 magic. The silver-haired girl jots it all down in her notebook, finding it very bizarre, and deduces this new tutor must be incredible. Laughing, the noble girl says she went after a mercenary because his skill makes up for not being rich. In complete shock, the studious girl looks up and stops writing when she hears the word mercenary. At this, the young redhead also can't hide the huge shock she got from this crazy revelation. Taking a sip of her tea, The girl connects the dots and thinks about how the rebellious student must have reacted to all this. She remembers the girl was so terrible that she even made the family's former head chef run away. Thinking about it, the noble finds it crazy how the biggest troublemaker in the house became a strong mage so quickly. With a smirk, the redhead realizes this mysterious teacher must have a very special gift. Very curious, she asks her friend for the teacher's name straight up, and this confuses her. The girl gives an excited smile, saying the master will be famous soon, and she'd love to know everything. Feeling immense pride, the young dark-haired girl closes her eyes and reveals softly that the guy's name is Derek. Elsewhere, the little blonde student praises this same guy to the old lady, talking about his classes. Hiding her anger, the woman tries to maintain a very fake smile, praising the girl's effort in her studies. Sitting in the well-lit room, the child insists on giving all the credit to her teacher, and the old woman asks a question. With a cute little laugh, the girl admits she found everything very difficult and only learned because of the master. A vein of anger pops on the lady's face as she agrees through clenched teeth, while cursing the madman in her mind. Leaving the room, the matriarch walks down the hall, clutching her clothes with a look of great anger and hatred. With a very sinister look, the woman vows she will not let this poor guy continue to influence her. Outside, a young maid carries a bucket, smiling as she talks about the lady's new kindness. The older gardener agrees, all excited, telling how the girl changed like night and day in the past weeks. Holding his chin, the butler with the monocle thinks it's all very cool and compares the young woman to her older sister. But hearing the servants praise the girl only makes the lady's blood boil with rage behind the scenes. Later, night falls over the huge house, showing a very starry and peaceful sky above the trees. On the dark grass, a huge and mysterious spell book lies open, glowing with magical energy. The white-haired teacher breathes with great difficulty, and his face is all sweaty from the hard training. Covered by a shining blue aura, the boy casts an intense gaze as he tries to focus all his power. He exhales very slowly through his mouth, trying to keep his breathing and energy completely under control. At this, very strong blue magical flames begin to come out of his gloved hand, creating a great light. But the effort is too great, and the young man falls back tiredly onto the grass, breathing deeply and with no strength left. Still catching his breath, the silver-haired master looks over his shoulder and apologizes for the scare. He notices another young man in a uniform arriving, who smiles casually, asking if he interrupted anything. And very tired, the tutor says it's no problem at all and questions the reason for this late night visit. The atmosphere becomes silent for a little while, with the wind rustling the leaves and the starry sky above. Sitting together on a log, the soldier says he needs to talk about the little mage, and the white-haired man listens. But before starting the chat, the guard notices the magic book and is impressed by the level of that power. The guy who just arrived gets annoyed to learn that the great duke lent out such a rare item like that. Very calmly, the protagonist says it's still a very high level, but it doesn't hurt to start reading it all. The guard then remembers the bearded leader's words, saying that the white-haired guy was a true genius. Back to reality, the young man hides his nervousness and praises the teacher's talent in a somewhat awkward way. Then the tutor gets straight to the point, wanting to know the real problem, and his colleague sighs before speaking. A bit embarrassed, the soldier scratches his face, admitting the problem is understanding what teenage girls like these days. Completely without a reaction, the white-haired master just stares at his colleague with a blank look, trying to understand the gossip. With his cheeks very red, the guard wonders if the young woman would like to receive a handmade rag doll. Upon seeing the very bizarre image of this toy in his head, the silver-haired tutor shoots down the idea on the spot. Laughing nervously, the young man agrees, saying he expected that and also thought the idea was pretty lame. Sighing, the guard stands up, looking at the house, and asks if the mage has finished his night training. With the book in his hand, the master follows his friend as they walk slowly back across the large courtyard's grass. Walking ahead, the guard breaks the silence and thanks the teacher from the bottom of his heart for all the help. Smiling, he comments on how the vibe of the house has improved a lot, and that even his grumpy father seems very happy. The white-haired man finds the Duke a great mystery, while the guard laughs and assures that everyone agrees on that. At this, the guard's steps suddenly stop on the green grass, catching the young master's attention right behind him. Looking at the starry sky, the young man admits that people can change, especially children of that age. With a calm look, he confesses that he also plans to change his attitudes since his younger sister changed. Turning to face his friend, the guard thanks him once more for all the effort the dedicated tutor made. With a very peaceful expression, the red-eyed mage listens to those sweet words in a thoughtful silence. Changing the subject, the noble gestures with his hands, noticing that the girl's magic seems like painting a beautiful picture. The silver-haired man is very surprised on the inside and thinks how incredible the young man is for noticing such a small difference. Without hiding anything, the master says that the little student is using a method focused on a more wild magic. The white-haired man explains very seriously that at this rate, the girl will reach a level of training completely on her own. Walking ahead, the mage says that trying to meddle at this more advanced level would only end up hindering the girl. The guard looks at the teacher's back and smiles excitedly, feeling that his sister's day to shine is coming. Time passes very quickly with a 2-month jump as a very colorful flower sits on the bedroom table. In the bedroom, the little student asks about the plant while the super chill employee styles her blonde hair, holding the beautiful flower affectionately. The girl smells the sweet scent, commenting that spring seems eternal. The woman praises the girl's incredible magical progress, remembering how she also grew closer to the servants. With a very sweet smile, the little girl regrets the lost time and says her new life is thanks to the master. The employee laughs, joking that now she understands the girl's happiness, since it was the day for another magic lesson. At this, the student happily asks the woman to set aside another one of those flowers for her to give to the master as a gift. But fate had other plans, and the beautiful colored plant ends up slipping and falling straight to the floor. The flower hits the floor, causing its delicate petals to come loose and fly through the air, ruining the happy mood. The little blonde girl stands in total shock as heavy tears begin to stream down her face. With her eyes full of pain and very confused, the little girl says her beloved tutor's name with a trembling voice. In the other room, the older brother is leaning against the wall seriously, confirming that she heard the harsh truth. With his empty and calm gaze, the white-haired man states bluntly that he has nothing more to teach the girl. A sad message echoes, saying that just as the seasons change, there is no winter or spring forever. A little earlier, we see the master in a meeting with the great bearded duke, explaining the mage's enormous talent. The silver-haired man confesses that if he continued to interfere with the girl's education, he would only end up clipping her wings. With his back turned, the great leader accepts the teacher's words, agreeing that he is no longer useful there. The old duke falls into a very heavy silence as he tries to process his daughter's great development. Then the great boss stands up from his huge work desk and looks at the young mercenary with great respect. Walking to the window, the leader focuses his gaze on the trees and thanks the guy from the bottom of his heart for helping the girl. He confesses that he focused too much on political problems and ended up failing badly in his role as a good father. Passing by the white-haired man, the old noble maintains his great posture and asks when the tutor would be leaving the house. The mage calmly explains that he would catch a ride with the young, dark-haired woman who would be visiting the mansion soon. Sitting on the sofa, the boy agrees to return the library key and the spell book he was reading before, but the protective father cuts off the conversation, stating that he can keep the relic and just needs to hand over the access. The protagonist's red eyes widen slightly, shocked by the valuable prize he just won. With his hands behind his back, the old man looks at the sunlight on the glass and dismisses the teacher from that large room. In complete silence, the white-haired man focuses his attention only on the floor, processing his new and advantageous unemployment. Touched by the rich guy's attitude, the boy places his hand on his chest and bows as a sign of gratitude. The white-haired young man walks through the giant palace corridors in a very long and heavy silence. At this, the little blonde girl goes to confront him, upset, saying that he arrived out of nowhere and now wants to leave. With a sad look, The girl listens to the tutor call her name in a very serious and rather formal way. Standing inside the room, the teacher asks what else could be done and knows the student will be stubborn. Very desperate, the poor little girl begs, almost crying, asking for her master not to leave the house. But the white-haired man lowers his head, maintaining a total silence in the face of the little mage's sad request. With that, he just turns his back and begins to walk very slowly across the large blue carpet of his room. Making a bow, the mage announces that he will go back to being a mercenary and expects her in high society in the future. Hearing that, the young apprentice clenches her hands, trembling with so much sadness for losing her master. Then the boy smiles casually, promising that they will see each other again when he is much stronger. With a cute pout, the girl holds back her tears and grumbles, calling her teacher very annoying. Night falls over the huge mansion as the young woman admits that he always has the right answer for everything. In bed, the little girl sleeps, sweating and breathing deeply, seeming to be trapped in a very tense nightmare. In her dream, very bizarre shadows surround the girl, laughing and saying she's just a child with no talent. Very scared, the child cries nonstop as the cruel voices shout that she is the shame of the family. At this, the girl's blue eyes widen in pure panic upon hearing that she should never have been born. With a panicked scream, the little blonde girl wakes up with a start, clutching the sheets in a very desperate way. Sitting on the giant bed in the dark room, the wretched young woman breathes very rapidly, trying to calm down from the shock. Holding her sweaty hair, she realizes with great relief that it was all just a bad dream in her head. Suddenly, the door opens with a young maid entering, very worried to see if she was okay. Calmer, the blue-eyed girl looks at the woman, who explains she heard a very loud noise in the room. At that moment, a thought crosses the little mage's mind, leaving her a bit hesitant and silent. She wonders if she should go back to being annoying and bratty with the poor maids to create some excuse. Looking at her own hands under the sheet, the girl remains lost in her very confused feelings. The noble girl wonders if her dear master would stay for her while the employee asks if she's feeling unwell. But surprising everyone, a small, super calm and mature smile forms on the young apprentice's face. The maid is shocked to hear the little girl declare that she will never do that kind of annoying thing again. With a very radiant smile, the little blonde girl calms the woman, stating that bad attitudes don't give her value. The sun shines again, illuminating the gigantic family palace, marking the beginning of a good new day. In the courtyard, the white-haired man puts his bag in the carriage, arranging the ride with the young dark-haired girl. Smiling nicely from inside the carriage, the beautiful noblewoman tells him to say goodbye as they will be leaving soon. Wearing a long dark cloak, the silver-haired boy just nods his head, agreeing with the woman on the spot. Outside, the whole family and the faithful servants gather in front of the castle to say their farewells. Facing her former tutor, the girl asks if he is really leaving, and the mage just confirms everything. The older brother praises the teacher's great effort and offers any help he might need in the future. Very humbly, the young mercenary bows his head, thanking them for the incredible reception from that rich family. Soon after, he lifts his gaze, focusing his striking red eyes directly on his former child student. With her arms crossed and a pouting face, the little girl tries to maintain her tough girl pose in the courtyard. Bothered by the boy's silence, the blonde girl blushes and starts yelling, asking why he's staring at her. Full of attitude, the girl says she won't cry for him to stay, because she's not a little kid anymore. The white-haired man gives a sweet smile, saying it was an honor, and asks her to always remember the magic he taught. Laughing proudly, the noble girl vows she will tell everyone his name, and that he will never have peace again. Hearing this great promise, the young teacher is speechless at so much confidence from his little student. At this, the girl's large eyes glisten with some tears, showing how much she will miss him. Hiding her tears, the blonde girl yells for him to take care, while the master smiles, asking the same of her. Pounding her chest, the young mage guarantees in a very cute way that she has already grown up and can take care of herself. The mercenary's gaze fills with enormous affection upon seeing all that incredible growth in the little girl. At that moment, a memory hits the white-haired man's mind, making him remember when he said that same phrase. In his memory of the past, A super kind woman was hugging him with a lot of love when he was still a kid. The beautiful woman was smiling protectively, asking the little warrior to always keep her words. Coming out of his memories, the tutor remained silent, processing all these old memories in his mind. In a serious tone, the boy calls out to his former student, looking at her deeply with a very sincere gaze. Stroking the noble's face, he assures her that she doesn't need to force herself to grow up so fast in life. Tears well up again in the little warrior's blue eyes, and she becomes very emotional with these words. With her back to the carriage, the little girl tries to hide her crying and wipes her tears with the utmost care. Turning to leave, the master hears the girl's call and stops for one last, very brief moment. With a smile and a teary eye, the young mage waves goodbye, saying she will see him again. She continues to wave as she watches her tutor get into the carriage, preparing to leave soon. With a tearful face, the noble says they will meet in the future, promising to become much stronger in her training. From inside, the boy just listens in silence as the blue sky becomes the focus of the grand scene. With that, the cart arrives in the commercial area, with a fat rat fleeing in fear through the wooden boxes. The old bar door creaks loudly, and we see two strange axes stuck in the entrance of that place. Inside, a boy takes a very hard punch right in the face, while other guys yell and root for the worst. The white-haired man watches everything quietly as two brutes support the beating of the fallen boy. The injured kid's face is already bleeding, and the brawler gets ready to deliver another final blow. At this, a young blonde girl with a ponytail appears, all excited, calling the guy's name with great enthusiasm. With a smirk, the silver-haired man raises his hand to hold his friend's arm and says he's really back. In this famous bar, the three warriors are gathered while the white-haired guy drinks peacefully. The bearded bartender offers a glass of the guy's favorite drink on the house to celebrate his return. With her face resting on her hand, the girl teases him, saying he's very pale, looking like a little rich noble. At this, the strong guy asks what happened at the mansion, and the warrior girl blurts out that he was a magic teacher there. Taking a sip, the silver-haired man just says there's nothing to tell, and that he just worked like everyone else. The blonde girl complains, finding the guy very mysterious, and gets annoyed that he doesn't share anything about the trip. The strong guy joins the conversation and says she had to work much harder to cover for her partner's absence. With a little smile, the bartender says all that work must have earned the guy a lot of money. With his back turned, the white-haired man replies that he got something way cooler than money, and this confuses the boss. With that, the boy throws the large magic book on the table, showing everyone his payment, which was worth a lot. Shocked, the two mercenaries can't believe what they're seeing and think it's a level 2 book. Correcting the mistake, the young warrior says very calmly that the green wire is actually level 3. The duo freaks out with envy, and the boss accuses the boy of theft, while the blonde just wants to know where to find one. Very casually, the silver-haired tutor says it was the great duke himself who gave him that incredible gift. The mercenary girl grabs her partner by the neck, yelling that it's a lie and wanting to know if they're looking for an archer. Later, the light of a single candle illuminates the large empty hall of the bar, creating a very peaceful atmosphere. Sitting at the table, the white-haired man asks for new missions, and the blonde girl lying on the bar finds this rush strange. The red-eyed boy explains that his fighting skills are a bit rusty and that he needs to train. Leaning on the broom, the bartender assures that very skilled mages always have plenty of work to pick up. The young mercenary states that he would love to start as soon as possible, preferably the next day. The next day, the sun shines in the sky as the warrior duo travels in the cart along a dirt road. Out of nowhere, a green and very ugly monster appears and attacks the archer, who runs away scared through the forest. But with her partner's help, the creature is soon defeated, and the warrior wipes the sweat with her tired arm. In a dark cave, giant and monstrous spiders appear, ready to devour the pair of hunters there. In the moving cart, the mage reads a book while his partner feels sick from the swaying of the wooden vehicle. At night, the two sleep in sleeping bags around a campfire to try to ward off the cold of the woods. Far from the camp, the silver-haired man trains in an open space, creating a huge aura of shining blue energy. Closing his eyes with great concentration, He focuses all his magical power in his hands for a strong spell. A blue mana stone floats, glowing between his hands, releasing some rays in a very powerful light. With that, the boy is thrown backward by the force of this great power, being swallowed by a very bright flash. The magical explosion illuminates the entire dark forest with a flash of blue light that can be seen from very far away. Fallen on the grass, the warrior breathes very heavily with a dirty hand as he recovers from his great effort. Looking at the open book, he realizes he has already managed to master almost all the level 2 spells, but the mage thinks that the barrier to reach the 3rd level is very difficult to overcome alone in the woods. The seasons change, and autumn leaves fall on the old bar, showing the great passage of time in the scene. Soon winter arrives, covering everything in snow, and the insane cold ends up taking over the entire small town. At that moment, the large wooden door of the tavern opens, creaking with the sound of the cold street wind. With that, the white-haired man and the blonde girl enter, tired and injured, with the woman complaining a lot about the absurd cold outside. The bartender is impressed by the doe's courage, and the archer complains that her partner didn't listen to her. He says only they would be crazy enough to hunt a harpy's head in such bad weather. The boy thanks him for the hot towel and already feels much better after that super difficult and heavy mission. The boss then says they can rest, but there's a new mission perfect for the young mercenary. With a smile, the guy guarantees it's an easy job with good pay, even if it's a bit boring. He reveals that the job came from the Rohol Mercenary Corps, located on the famous West Street of that city. Then, the bartender asks if the young man knows the famous and respected Count Belmed from that region. The silver-haired boy hears that they are looking for a poor guy for a magic duel, serving as a punching bag. All he needs to do is take a few hits, and with that, the mage arrives at the duel arena of these rich guys. At the location, an older guy and a red-haired girl walk together, chatting about the training. The young woman asks who her opponent will be, and the master explains they arranged for a commoner for her to train with. Very ticked off, the rich girl complains about having to fight a commoner, finding the idea totally absurd. But the older master smiles and says it's part of the training and that the reward will be good for him. The redhead grumbles, saying that rich people are all the same, using the poorer folk as punching bags for training. She admits that the rival uses level 1 magic, but she's already almost hitting level 2 in magic power. Sitting on the bench, the white-haired man prepares for this duel, adjusting his gloves with a very focused look. Clearing his throat, the mercenary stands up and faces his opponent with his very intense red eyes. With her arms crossed, the rich girl looks him up and down, asking if he's the rival of the day for the training. Making a polite gesture, the white-haired boy introduces himself to the young noble using his name, Derek. The redhead says her name is Alenton and becomes very thoughtful, thinking she has heard the guy's name somewhere before. Then her master is surprised that the mage is so young, and Alent calls them both to the combat arena. In the courtyard, the young warrior stretches for the fight, trying to warm up to start the training soon. Soon after, she crosses her arms and asks if the mercenary knows the basic rules of a magic duel. The silver-haired man confirms with a very serious look, saying yes, and that he understands all the rules of that fight. All satisfied, the noble tells him to fight with all he's got because she plans to end that duel very quickly. She thinks of just pushing the guy out with a shockwave and thus ending the thing at once. But the guy questions her about fighting with everything and asks what level of resistance she will need. The mage gets completely confused by that very weird question, finding the whole thing a bit silly. The young man explains that he needs to know so he can help her in the best way possible during her training. The older master just observes the scene in silence, seeming quite curious about the conversation between the two. The redhead lets out a mocking little laugh, finding the poor guy's audacity a very amusing thing to see. With a sly smile, she comments on his unique way of speaking and repeats for him to fight with all his strength. The white-haired man remains silent for a brief moment, processing the insistent request of his new opponent. Then he agrees and says he will do as she commands as a strong blue energy springs directly from his hands. The two mages face each other from a distance with glowing magical auras, ready to start this combat for good. The rich girl casts a spell, and thinks he is very arrogant, even though he masters magic while being very young. She decides she will show the boy the absurd difference in power that exists between nobles and commoners. At this, a large magic attack is fired towards the young mercenary, who waits very calmly. The red-eyed boy faces the magic coming his way without showing a single shred of fear on his face. He stands his ground and waits for the attack to get close, maintaining his very confident posture the whole time. With that, the magic hits an invisible barrier, exploding in a huge flash without even hitting its target. The young warrior is completely shocked to see that her powerful attack had no effect on him. The silver-haired man then asks in a very calm and serious tone what the next attack she plans to use will be. The redhead is filled with anger and surprise, noticing that the boy really had a good reason to be confident. But she warns that this changes nothing and prepares a magic arrow spell that is much more powerful. With that, the mage attacks with a shower of man arrows that shine with an intense and very cold blue light. The noble girl screams that this is the end and focuses all her ice arrows for a final attack. But the mercenary makes a very simple move and easily deflects one of the magic arrows right back at her. At this, the redhead's eyes widen in pure shock, unable to believe what her opponent just did. Out of nowhere, all the blue arrows begin to change direction, flying far away from their original target on the ground. The young noble is frozen without any reaction, as her own attacks narrowly miss her. She wonders how the guy controlled a simple spell with such precision and with such insane mastery. The older master admits that his level of magic is amazing and that the gossip about him was all true. With a fiery aura around her, the mage admits she truly underestimated her opponent in the great battle. Then she declares that she will fight with everything she has and releases an absurd amount of fire power. The white-haired man notices the change in strategy and realizes she is going to destroy the entire platform of that fight. He praises the girl's ability to adapt, and she prepares a fire spell with frightening power. With that, a shower of very golden fire lances begins to fall from the skies, covering the entire arena space. The young mercenary looks at that storm of flames that is approaching him without showing any emotion. Looking up, the guy realizes there will be no way to dodge that attack in such a large area. So the mage creates a dome of blue energy around himself to protect himself from the very fiery attack. The fire lances explode against his shield, forcing him to kneel on the ground due to the strong impact. The young rich girl observes the huge curtain of smoke and dust that was raised after her attack. Little by little, the dust begins to settle, revealing the grand result of that large fire explosion. From within the smoke, the white-haired man appears without a single scratch and gestures, beckoning the mage to come closer. But out of nowhere, the boy's eyes widen in shock as he realizes something very unexpected is happening. The redhead emerges from the middle of the smoke and creates an ice spear right in front of his face in the blink of an eye. The mercenary realizes there's no way to dodge or raise a shield at such a short distance. He is impressed by the young mage's raw talent, recognizing that the girl is truly incredible. At that moment, an absurdly bright white light explodes between the two, illuminating the entire combat area. The girl screams in pain and complains that she can't see anything after that blinding, intense flash. The force of this light throws her backward, leaving the girl completely dizzy and not knowing what to do on the ground. With blurred vision, the mage wonders where he is and complains that she can't see anything in front of her. She tries to focus on her hearing to listen to the sounds around her and find out where her opponent is hiding now. Out of nowhere, an ice blade flies right past her face, almost hitting the girl dead on. Very scared, she realizes she didn't hear any noise and wonders what that blow could have been. The young rich girl understands that he sent a confusion spell to nullify all the sounds of that great battle. With that, another ice attack is thrown in her direction in a completely silent and very lethal way. The blade grazes her face, making a very small cut and leaving the girl even more scared. She wonders if he thought she would depend on hearing everything after taking a blinding magic flash. At this, the mage remembers that first attack and wonders about the reason the guy missed on purpose before. In a rage, the noble figures out that the mercenary went super easy on her and didn't use all his power in the fight. The boy continues to control the ice blades, making the things fly in circles in the air around him. The redhead yells that he won't have a chance and creates a mana barrier to defend herself from these attacks. But her eyes widen in surprise upon noticing a fast and unexpected movement from him. The mage gets a shock seeing the guy running in her direction to close the space between them in the arena. She calls him an idiot and thinks that her specialty is the super fast manifestation of mana for attack. The mercenary gets closer and closer with his hand extended, ready to attack at any moment. The young noble plans to manifest her magic well beforehand to end the fight once and for all. But instead of using his hands, the boy stumps his foot hard on the ground, giving his opponent a huge scare. With that, a shockwave goes through the ground, throwing the mage far away and knocking her off balance. The redhead is left completely confused and wonders what just happened at that exact moment. A purple energy begins to rise from the ground around the young mage's feet, impressing everyone. Shocked, the noble realizes the guy is using magic with his feet to shoot crazy rays in her direction. Hit dead on by the electric rays, the young mage screams in pain, feeling that shock all over her body. The older teacher looks on, astonished, as the guy runs and his student takes some very brutal shocks. Right away, the master notices he can't read the guy's movements despite having a huge background in fighting. Fallen on the ground, the young mage faces the boy, breathing heavily and completely surprised by his great power. With a little smile, she admits he's a very different guy and runs a hand through her own sweaty hair. The white-haired man gets close and says he underestimated the girl at first, thinking she wasn't that strong. He continues the conversation, saying he even thought she was just a big talker with no real skill. The redhead gets up from the ground, coming face to face with her great opponent, listening very well to his words. Then the mage makes a bow, thanking the guy for having taught her something so interesting that day. With a very confident smile, the noble says thank you once more, and her eyes shine with a new challenge. Suddenly, the young woman jumps and launches an attack of purple rays towards the surprised mercenary. The white-haired guy dodges by a hair's breadth and defends himself with his hands from the remaining electric attack. He raises an energy barrier to hold on while the mage doesn't stop attacking with many more rays. Hit by her own magic, the noble screams in pain and ends up being thrown far away by the force of the explosion. The silver-haired man catches the girl in mid-air before she hits the ground face first, saving her from a nasty injury. With his red eyes glowing, the young man faces the girl's face with a very serious and very intense look. The redhead is in a state of shock, unable to react to this very unexpected situation. She continues with her eyes very wide, sweating and with her heart pounding in her chest. At this, a bell rings, making a very loud noise, marking the end of the duel and stopping the great fight between the two. The older guy rings the bell with a calm look, finally ending his rich student's training. The young mage moves away from the guy and steps firmly on the ground, recovering that chick posture from before. She praises him, saying it was a good job, while the mercenary bows with the utmost politeness. The redhead pouts like she's annoyed, and the wind blows through her hair, showing how frustrated she was. A little later, the white-haired man finds the noble sitting while a woman styles the girl's red hair. He says she is a great mage, but the girl retorts that he's the one with some absurdly good reflexes. With a smile, the young woman says he must be very used to sucking up to everyone to survive. The white-haired guy explains he had to survive the life of a mercenary, and so he learned a few tricks. The mage says she likes very hard-working people, but her former teacher doesn't seem to like the guy. She gives him a heads up not to get the old man ticked off, or he might end up in a bad spot in the future. The rich girl says she learned a lot from him, and that her next fight will be in the Rosia Hall with that. The young man says that with the raw power the girl has, she doesn't need to worry too much in the next duel. The redhead picks up her little tea and says she doesn't care about others, because the goal is to crush one person. A beautiful young woman with blue hair appears in her mind with a very sweet smile and a background full of cool magic. The noble blurts out that her greatest enemy's name is Isline Eleanor Duplain, and that she is a very famous mage. Hearing that name, The guy remains silent for a little while, seeming like he knows the person mentioned very well. After getting it all out, the mage dismisses the mercenary, saying the guy can hit the road. The young man walks away, leaving the wretched noble girl alone with her mate inside that giant and fancy hall. Holding the cup, the redhead thinks about the so-called Derek of the Belden mercenaries, trying to remember where she's heard that. While drinking the warm tea, she wonders why that name and place seems so familiar. A memory of a blue-haired girl talking about Derek suddenly hits the girl's mind. With that, the rich girl's eyes widen in a huge shock when she finally remembers where she heard his name. The guy in the dark cloak is walking through the large courtyard, getting ready to leave the rich girl's mansion. But out of nowhere, the red-haired girl appears and grabs his arm, stopping him in his tracks and preventing him from disappearing. The white-haired man turns and looks at the young woman, super confused by that sudden action, and she seems a little desperate. He keeps staring at her in silence, waiting for the girl to give some explanation for that weird fit. With a victorious little smile, the mage accuses the guy of being the mercenary who taught everything to her old rival. At dusk, the light of the setting sun illuminates the giant and very chic mansion, creating a calm atmosphere. Inside a super cozy room, a fireplace burns with very high flames, warming the whole environment. Sitting near the fire, the noble says she'll get straight to the point and would do anything to crush Azaline. The young mercenary is very surprised when he hears his former student's name again in the middle of that conversation. The redhead says she needs to hit level 2, but just winning the next duel would already be an incredible thing. The redhead says he's good at softening things, since he only called the girl very competitive in the chat. She blurts out that before, she wanted to finish off her rival so badly that she would do the most absurd things just to succeed. The silver-haired man listens quietly as the girl confesses that she didn't think twice before playing dirty. Reflected in the water of her tea, the noble reveals that being envious is very ugly, and that she also felt that a lot. But in the end, it amounted to nothing, as her rival always treated her well even when she took some unprovoked insults. At this, the young mercenary gets real and asks why she's telling him this whole crazy story. Then the mage places her cup very calmly on the wooden table, making a super light little sound. The young rich girl assures that she's being very serious about this business, and that she has some questions to ask. With a very casual pose, the red-eyed guy asks her to just spit out what she has to say. Sitting close to the fire, the redhead concludes that he must already know the absurd level of talent her rival has. With a fixed gaze, the girl also wants to know what the real difference in level is between them. The white-haired man just listens as the girl justifies that this is why she is asking these questions. A very clear image of the powerful blue-haired mage appears once again right in the rich girl's head. At this, the noble just asks the guy what she needs to do to come out as the winner. The white-clothed guy stays quiet, just processing every word that came out of the young woman's mouth. He picks up his drink and agrees that the rival is very strong, giving several compliments to her skills. The mercenary states that she can evolve very quickly, and that many times she can read people's eyes well. Looking into the mage's eyes, he realizes she didn't ask that question just to hear some silly compliments. Looking at the flames, he notices the girl's heavy desperation for seeking help, even from a guy who is a mercenary. The huge luxurious hall is filled with a super tense atmosphere between the two young people sitting near the fire. The silver-haired man takes a dramatic pause, thinking very carefully about every word he's going to say next. With a very cold and direct tone, the guy states in no uncertain terms that she will not be able to beat her rival. The red-haired girl is frozen, listening to that heavy truth coming out of her guest's mouth. The boy's red eyes give off an intense glow as he continues to maintain his very calm pose. But the young woman swallows hard, showing him that she has no intention of giving up on her biggest goal. She lifts her head with a firm posture and swears she will win, even if the situation seems impossible. The white-haired man notices the girl's unwavering determination and continues to listen to her outburst in total silence. Out of nowhere, the redhead gets closer to the table and blurts out that he was the guy who trained her rival's skills. With a desperate look, the mage begs him to be her master and guarantee her great victory. Faced with that absurd request, the young mercenary just sighs and continues to maintain his calm. He says there's a method for it, but he warns her that there's something that's worrying him. The noble girl sits down again, crossing her arms, liking the idea and wanting to know what the problem is. The boy then asks her point blank if she really knows what kind of training was used in the old lessons. At this, a very tense flashback shows the former student thrown on the bedroom floor, completely battered from training. In the past, the guy was holding a giant sword with a very sinister and scary little smile on his face. Then he would raise the weapon, completely covered in a blue magic, ready to strike the poor girl. The redhead says she has no idea about the details but insists she would do anything to come out with this victory. With that, the white-haired man moves to the second point of the conversation, reminding the girl that he makes a living as a mercenary. The mage scoffs, saying she doesn't care if people complain that her master is of a lower class. Facing the boy, the girl focuses on a serious tone and says her dream is to become the most famous mage in the empire. The young man listens to the rich girl say it would be crazy to have such a huge dream if she doesn't crush the nobles. Placing her hand on her chest, the girl asks not to be judged, saying she knows very well what matters in life. The silver-haired man just looks at the girl's very determined face without showing any expression, but he cuts the romantic mood, warning with a straight face that mercenaries need good money. The redhead stands static, a look of huge shock on her face, after hearing that simple warning from the guy. Out of nowhere, the girl's face starts to turn very red with pure embarrassment in the middle of that very luxurious room. Dying of embarrassment, the mage gets the hint and promises on her life that she can pay whatever price the guy wants. With his eyes blinking, the mercenary gets real, saying that their training will be very tough and hard. In another corner, a blue-haired girl comments to her friends that the next event will be a magic duel. At this, the red-headed noble overhears the gossip about the event and decides she wants to participate too. A friend tells the blue-eyed mage that she's being too humble about her skills. When they meet, the red-headed noble gives a very provocative little smile to her great rival. In her head, the girl scoffs, thinking that the guy the other one couldn't get is now all hers. With her mouth slightly open, the blue-haired mage looks slightly surprised by the situation, but she congratulates the redhead on her choice and says he must be a very good teacher. With a casual smile, the young woman compliments her opponent once more in a very sincere way. The noble thanks her awkwardly and wonders why the girl's reaction wasn't what she had imagined. The blue-haired girl just stays quiet for a moment, looking intently at her opponent. In a memory, she was suggesting to her friend Diella to ask Derek for some extra magic lessons. But the young blonde girl was in a total panic and begged her not to do such a thing. Back in the present, the mage stands there thoughtfully with her hand on her chin, trying to figure out the situation. The redhead thinks with a wicked smile that her rival must have already understood what she meant. In her mind, the noble shouts that she stole the girl's teacher right in front of her, and with great pleasure, the blue-eyed young woman tries to talk about Derek, but the other one cuts her off right away. With a little smile, the mage says goodbye, and says the conversation was great, but she needs to go train. The redhead walks away, thinking she's the best, while her rival just watches her from a distance. The mage then thinks she shouldn't take it seriously, and that Derek wouldn't do anything malicious. From afar, a white-haired young woman observes the two nobles talking while sipping a cup of tea. She drinks casually and thinks that in the end, everyone is just looking out for themselves. Meanwhile, at the Belden mercenary group's tavern, life goes on as usual. Inside, the boy's boss asks why the jobs with the Belmid family just keep increasing. The white-haired guy takes a drink and says it's no problem, since he handles everything without having to travel. But the older man questions if the young noble can really win against her rival in the duel. With a confident look, the mercenary says it's not impossible and that he already has a plan. He explains that if the mage can get past second-level magic, they can win the fight. The boss grabs a barrel and tells him to stop dreaming and tell him what his real plan is. With a serious look, the young man reveals that's what he wanted to talk about and that he needs some help. The older man remains silent with a confused look, not understanding what he wants. The red-eyed boy says that to ensure their safety, they will really need Pelin. Carrying the barrel, his boss remains quiet, just processing all that information. He then accuses the young man of planning something crazy instead of something sensible. The mercenary confesses to his uncle that, to be honest, the whole plan is actually very risky. In a memory, young Pelin was crying desperately, saying that those guys were scammers. She continued crying at the bar, shouting that they tricked her and took all her money. The boss then sighs and agrees to help with the plan, even though he thinks it's a terrible idea. At dusk, the training begins at the noble family's huge mansion under the orange sky. With her arms crossed, the mage listens to the mercenary say that the first lesson will be a real fight. He stretches and says they will repeat the exercise 10 times to analyze her magic. The white-haired guy explains that first, he needs to see how she really fights. The redhead comments that his training sessions are very tough, but that's why she hired him. With his hand glowing with blue mana, the boy tells her to get ready because they are about to start. After the fight, the training courtyard is completely wrecked, with the ground full of cracks. The noble is on her knees, breathless and exhausted after the intense fight with her teacher. The boy thanks her for the effort and tells her to rest for just about 10 minutes. Shocked, the mage complains, saying she doesn't have a single drop of mana left in her body. The mercenary replies very coldly that if she pushes herself a little more, she definitely still has some. He criticizes the girl's way and tells her to create 10 more ice lances right now. The young man scolds her and asks what she can do if she can't even manage that, and that there are 5 left. He then orders her to fire 100 more magic arrows as the sky begins to darken. Lying on the ground, the young mage complains that she can't take it anymore and has no strength to continue. But the boy says she has worked very hard and that now she can finally go have dinner. He then asks if she is okay and reminds her that she can give up if she wants to. With a yell of anger, the noble suddenly stands up, showing all her frustration. Ticked off, she asks if he wants her to give up after all the warnings he gave. The redhead states that he has no idea what she's been through to survive, and that this is nothing. In response, the white-haired guy admits that maybe he really did underestimate her. She turns around and says she's just tired, and that tomorrow she will show her true skills. With a smile, the mage asks for the next day's training to be even tougher than this one. At this, the young mercenary asks, completely confused, what she means by tomorrow's training. The red-haired girl stares at him, not understanding the question, and remains completely silent. With a cold look, he reminds her that this is just their break so they can have dinner. The two of them stand still in the mansion's courtyard as the atmosphere between them grows heavier. She laughs and says he has a weird sense of humor, but he denies that he's joking. Under the hot sun, the noble continues to train in front of the mansion, encouraged by him. The redhead summons 5 magic arrows with great effort while he just watches. The young man demands 10 more arrows, and she yells, asking why the number just keeps increasing. They then start running, and he warns that if she stops, they will do mana training. Exhausted, the mage throws herself into a chair with a completely lost look and no breath at all. He approaches and asks if she's okay, but she tries to play it off, saying it's fun. The white-haired guy repeats that she can give up whenever she wants if she can't handle the pace. The noble forces a smile and guarantees that this is easy, and that she won't give up. The red-eyed boy just stares at her with a serious and unreadable expression. He then stands up and says she has rested enough, and that they will duel now. An angel statue in the garden shows that 2 weeks of pure training have passed. The redhead dozes at the table and asks her friend to wake her up when her rival Aisline arrives. With her head on the table, she comments on how tired she is because of the magic training. The white-haired friend then asks why she is pushing herself so hard. The young mage stays quiet for a moment, seeming to think a little about the question. Lying on the table, she answers with great certainty that it's simply because she wants to win. The blue-eyed girl hears the answer and stays quiet, just observing her friend. With a smile, she gives her some encouragement and says she will support her so she can get the victory. The white-haired young woman looks to the side with a slightly surprised expression. she sees a group of girls approaching and recognizes her friend's rival among them. A noble announces Aisline's arrival, and the redhead gets a fright, jumping up quickly. The blue-haired mage appears with a calm and very chic demeanor, as she has always been. In a panic, the girl desperately tries to fix her hair and her clothes. Her rival invites her to check out a new clothing store, and the young woman nervously agrees. After the group leaves, the noble continues to hide her face with her hands. She asks her friend if they have already left, and the white-haired girl says yes. The redhead sighs in relief and asks if they saw her in that sloppy state at the table. From a distance, her rival looks back with a surprised expression on her face. Aisline thinks about how tired her opponent looks and worries about her health. As night falls, the mansion is under a gray sky and a somewhat down and sad mood. A maid informs the young noble that a gift from the Duplain family has arrived for her. Inside a wooden box, there are several magic potions and a letter along with flowers. The servant explains that it was Aisline who sent them, and that they are items to recover mana. She praises the quality of the things, but the redhead orders everything to be thrown away now. In a firm tone, the mage repeats for them to get all of that out of her sight, and the servant obeys. The noble asks for her teacher while getting ready, and the servant says he has already arrived. Meanwhile, the rival's letter is shown with a message about the coming winter. The servant continues to comb the noble's hair, while the letter wishes her a good winter. In the letter, the rival says her family has produced many very high-quality items. She explains that she is sending the gifts to share with the other noble girls. The letter ends by wishing her a good day and with Aisline's own signature. Outside, the mercenary waits patiently, sitting and reading a random book. He seems focused and with a very serious look as he waits for his student. The noble arrives, and the boy notices she's early, but the girl cuts off the conversation. She then turns and asks the young man what he thinks, leaving the boy confused. The mage asks seriously what her progress has been in the last few weeks of training. The mercenary remains silent for a little while, thinking about how he will answer the question. In a very serious tone, he says that giving up is also a very intelligent strategy. The young noble is completely paralyzed and speechless at that cold response. With an annoyed look, the girl accuses him of always knowing how to irritate people. The boy apologizes dryly if his words came across that way. She yells that she didn't ask about giving up, but about how she could beat her rival. The mage screams that she didn't hire him to hear that she should simply give up. The white-haired guy listens to the girl's entire outburst in silence without reacting. Irritated, she tells the young man to leave if he's just going to talk nonsense and waste her time. But he questions her about what the problem is with simply not being able to win the duel. The boy explains that the obsession with winning can end up hindering her growth. With tears in her eyes, the girl says that if she did that, she would look pathetic. The young mercenary just observes in silence as she begins to cry. She confesses that she's used to speaking ill of her rival, and that she's nothing like her. The mage describes herself as a pathetic, jealous, and horrible person for feeling envious. The noble admits all her flaws and how childish and pathetic she truly is. With her body trembling, the girl continues to let out all her frustrations. She knows she has no reason to resent Aisline, but can't get over her complex. Crying, the young woman asks what's wrong with her, revealing her self-loathing. In a memory, she said she was being serious even if it revealed her biggest flaw. She has always had a strange feeling of self-hatred and asks what to do to win. The boy realizes it's not just jealousy, and that the person the mage resents the most isn't her rival. With his face full of tears, he understands that the person she resents the most is herself. The mercenary understands that this fight isn't just about a silly jealousy she feels for her rival. Winning is the only way for her to escape herself, hatred, and her inferiority complex. With that, he gets closer to the girl and states with certainty that they need to win. With a determined look, the young man promises that he will ensure her victory over her rival. The young mage looks at him with hope in her eyes and agrees with the promise he made. Elsewhere, a carriage travels very fast through a huge field of golden wheat. The horse neighs loudly as the carriage finally stops at its final destination. An older man in simple clothes gets out of the carriage and announces they have arrived. He is an elderly man with round glasses and a neat white mustache. The man is in front of the giant mansion of the Belmid family, the young mage's home. He is greeted by a red-haired nobleman who welcomes him on his return from Ebelstein. The nobleman is Tristan Belmed, the girl's father, and he invites the man to sit down. Tristan asks about his daughter, and the man says she has been training a lot. The father praises the girl's talent and says, with pride, that she will surely surpass him. The gentleman agrees with him, but thinks he shouldn't tell him that her master is a commoner. Suddenly, the nobleman announces he will have business in Ebelstein soon, surprising the man. The nobleman decides he will visit his daughter personally and bring a surprise gift. With a nervous smile, the man agrees but worries if this will really work out. The scene changes to a strange labyrinth near Ebelstein under a full moon in the sky. Near the entrance, a man in leather boots admits he's not sure about the plan. The leader of the Belden group questions if it's a good idea to take the noble to a place like this. The mage is shocked by the idea, and the young man calms her down, saying the place is low level. She's still hesitant and asks what she could do inside that dark labyrinth. The mercenary explains that she needs to improve her senses with real combat. With his hand glowing, he warns that the duel will be in a few days, and that she needs to train. The boy states that when time is short, this is the best way to improve quickly. The young noble is speechless, just staring at her teacher with wide eyes. The group of mercenaries enters the labyrinth, with the leader holding a torch to light the way. The girl complains about the dark place and wonders what those strange things are. The white-haired guy tells her to stay sharp, because even though it's easy, it's still dangerous. The mage gets scared and looks at her teacher with an expression of pure fear. A young blonde girl with golden eyes stays alert for any strange movement in the place. She warns the group that several goblins are coming from the front of the dark corridor. The group's leader warns that there's an ogre at the back, and the noble panics. He asks if he can still handle an ogre, and the man says it depends on the money. The white-haired guy cuts off the conversation and says they'll settle the payment later. Suddenly, strange noises and scary laughter echo through the labyrinth's corridor. The redhead is paralyzed with fear, realizing she's in front of real monsters. With a terrifying scream, the goblins advance with their spears ready for the attack. The white-haired boy jumps over the monsters to begin the counter-attack. The noble watches everything with a pale face and her mouth open in pure shock and great fear. With his sword glowing with blue mana, the young man asks Pelin to provide cover for him. He advances through the goblins, dodging attacks with great agility and precision. The young archer prepares an arrow with her bow, ready to support her friend. The arrow hits one of the goblins right in the head, taking it down instantly. With a focused gaze, the boy prepares to attack the monsters with his magic sword. He cuts a goblin in half with a single, precise blow, showing his skill. The mercenary uses fire magic to burn the enemies as he advances down the corridor. The archer continues to shoot arrows with perfect aim to finish off the monsters. The young man's sword pierces another goblin's head with a very quick and final blow. An arrow hits one of the goblins right in the eye, knocking it to the ground, no longer alive. The mage watches the battle with wide eyes, and her breath catching in fear. A scream of fright escapes the girl's mouth when a monster appears in front of her. A giant ogre with glowing red eyes materializes before the group. The group's leader faces the monster and mockingly asks how much it's worth in money. The ogre lets out a roar with great anger and prepares to attack the man with everything it has. With a giant club, the monster attacks the mercenary with a very powerful blow. The man is hit head-on, and the impact of the blow is very strong and destructive. One of the goblins is hit by a fireball and begins to burn intensely. Another monster is hit by a precise arrow right in the neck and falls, taken down. The young mage is horrified to see the monsters being defeated so violently. With her face pale with fear, she realizes she could also lose her life in that place. A scream of pure terror echoes through the labyrinth as the young woman continues to panic. The boy yells at her to snap out of it and warns that one of the monsters is heading her way. A goblin leaps towards the noble with the intention of attacking her with its dagger. In great fear, the girl thinks she is going to meet her end right there, unable to react. Yelling with anger, The young man tells the mage to take down the monster attacking her without a second thought. The mercenary shouts at her that this damsel, in distress act she's had until now needs to be left behind. The girl remembers confessing how pathetic and immature she felt. The mage is on the labyrinth floor as the monster gets closer and closer. In her mind, she wonders why her inferiority complex will never go away. The monster leaps to attack, and she thinks she was arrogant without achieving anything on her own. The girl remembers that the only thing she knew how to do was put others down out of envy. With her face sweating, the young noble remains paralyzed with fear in the face of the attack. Suddenly, the girl's hand begins to glow with an intense blue light of pure mana. With a determined look, she finally creates a powerful magic blade to defend herself. Facing the monster, she decides she came to defeat it and become a better person. Her teacher observes the scene with great attention and a serious expression on his face. The mage pierces the goblin's chest with her mana blade in a very precise blow. The mercenary group's leader watches the girl with an expression of great surprise. The young blonde archer also seems shocked by the noble's sudden action. The monster's body falls to the ground, and the girl stands panting after her first takedown. With heavy breathing, she faces the result of her own action for the first time, but the shock passes, and a look full of determination appears on her face now. The mage then turns and looks at her teacher, amidst the bodies of the monsters. He looks back at her and calmly says that this is just the first step for her. The girl disagrees and states with a smile that she has finally managed to take a step forward. The scene changes to the exit of the labyrinth, showing that their training has ended. A while later, the young mercenary is sitting and reading a letter that was for him. In the letter, the person apologizes for only getting in touch after 2 years. She explains that she is very busy teaching magic to a count's daughter. The sender fondly remembers the times they used to walk together through Ibelstein. The woman praises him, saying he is the most talented mage she has ever known. Sitting at her desk, she wonders what level the boy has reached now. The teacher ends the letter by asking him to show her his magic when they see each other. Finally, the letter is signed by his former teacher, named Keisha Flameheart. The mercenary continues to sit in the alley, rereading the letter from his former teacher. The noble approaches and asks what he's been reading for 2 weeks in that same spot. The boy simply replies that it's a letter his teacher sent him. The girl smiles and says the teacher must be incredible to teach someone like him. The white-haired young man just stares at the girl in silence, showing no reaction. He then agrees with the girl and states that she really is a great teacher. The noble gets a little embarrassed by the serious and direct answer the boy gave. The mage says it was just a joke and asks the young mercenary to forget what she said. The boy changes the subject and asks how she's feeling about the duel in 2 days. The girl becomes thoughtful and admits she's not sure how she's feeling, but a small smile begins to form on her lips as she thinks about the answer. With a confident smile, the mage states with absolute certainty that she will win the duel. The day of the duel arrives, and the magic arena is packed with nobles to watch the fight. The mage's rival is at the location, talking and laughing with her noble friends. Suddenly, the young woman's expression changes upon noticing that someone has just arrived at the arena. The white-haired mercenary walks calmly through the crowd of nobles. "Excuse me," the girl says goodbye to her friends to go talk to the guy who arrived. With a smile, the dark-haired young woman calls the mercenary by his name. The girl says she's happy to see him, and he replies that it's been a while since they've met. She mentions that she heard the news about him training Alenta in magic. The white-haired boy confirms that their paths crossed for a while. The two of them fall silent for a moment, just looking at each other in the middle of the crowd. The girl smiles and says he hasn't changed at all and asks if he was very hard on Alenta. She says that Diala mentioned he wasn't a normal teacher, making the boy serious. The young man accuses her of being too confident for worrying about her opponent. With a cold look, he warns that she should never let her guard down against an opponent. The dark-haired young woman is speechless at the mercenary's serious and sudden warning. The blue sky opens up over the duel arena, announcing the start of the great event. 2 nobles in the audience bet that Iselin will win unless her rival uses magic. One of them comments that she feels sorry for the noble because she's thin and looks like a skeleton. A dark-haired young woman gracefully walks up the stairs towards the arena. Everyone in the audience gets excited to see the arrival of the noble known as Lady Iceland. The crowd praises the girl's beauty as she walks with a confident smile on her face. Elsewhere, a pair of boots walks firmly towards the center of the arena. The young mage repeats to herself with determination that she will win this duel. The red-haired girl passes by a man and walks towards her great destiny. With a focused look, she states with absolute certainty that she will beat her rival. Her teacher watches her from a distance as she prepares for the biggest challenge of her life. The noble finally arrives in the arena and comes face to face with her opponent. Her rival greets her with a smile and asks if she has been doing well lately. The mage responds with a forced smile that her rival's calmness is an inspiration, but her expression changes, and she says she is not okay at all for that moment. The opponent confesses she has never been so nervous for a duel in her entire life. With a challenging smile, the redhead asks if they can finally start the fight. The dark-haired young woman faces her seriously, ready for the start of the combat. The red-haired mage summons a very powerful fire magic in her hands. Her rival doesn't fall behind and summons a water magic with the same intensity. The two of them face each other from a distance as the arena is filled with their magic. With a shout, the noble releases a huge amount of mana and creates fire runes. Her opponent is shocked and scared to see the giant power of that magic. The magic transforms into dozens of fire arrows, ready for the attack. The arrows are fired in a mass attack against the dark-haired young mage. The redhead watches her attack with a determined and confident look of victory. In a memory, the girl was exhausted after training hard in the labyrinth. The boy says she has no chance in skill, and she asks how she can win. With an injured hand, the mercenary replies that victory will come from willpower. He reminds her that he has already taught her to use every last drop of her mana in training. The young man explains that the fight will be decided by will, not by their skill. The master instructs her to use her magic in a flashy way to drag out the fight. He says that whoever has one more drop of mana will win, and she worries about her rival. Without thinking, the boy states that if her rival has more mana, she will simply lose. But he reminds her that she has the blood of the noble Belmaid family running in her veins. With a determined look, the young mage absorbs every word of her teacher. Back in the present, the mercenary tells her to believe in herself and in her power. Her rival is in shock to realize that the mage was at this level of power all along. With a swift movement, the red-haired young woman launches her attack with everything she's got. A shower of fire arrows falls from the sky towards her opponent in the arena. The dark-haired girl faces the giant attack that is approaching rapidly. Even in the face of danger, she doesn't back down and prepares to use her own magic. The young woman summons a huge water barrier to defend herself from the shower of fire. With a focused look, her rival faces the attack while preparing her defense. The red-haired maid shouts that she will win the duel with a look full of determination. She then launches a shower of fire arrows against her opponent in the arena. Her face shows her complete confidence in victory against her old rival. The dark-haired young woman creates a giant water barrier to protect herself from the attack. Inside the barrier, she calmly analyzes the situation with a cold and calculating look. The fire arrows hit the water barrier head-on, creating a cloud of steam. The audience is shocked by the mage's power and the size of her mana capacity, but her opponent remains protected inside her sphere of water without any problems. The rival realizes that the girl will run out of mana if she keeps attacking like this. With watchful eyes, the dark-haired young woman seems to have found an opening. She then locates the real mage running through the smoke of the explosion. With a smile, her rival says that now it's her turn to attack with all her strength. The girl launches a single, precise ice spear towards her opponent. The red-haired mage dodges the attack that grazes her body at the last second, but to her surprise, the ice spear hits her right in the right shoulder. Her rival is completely shocked to realize that something was not right. The young noble used illusion magic to trick her, even though it cost a lot of mana. The real mage appears behind her rival with an ice blade ready to attack. The dark-haired young woman turns with her eyes wide with pure surprise. The noble's attack was just a bait, so she could attack from behind. In a memory, the teacher said her attack would be blocked, leaving the girl confused. He explains that her rival would use an illusion to attack up close, and that this would fool her. The boy warns that his opponent is not an ordinary fighter, and that she needed a plan. Back in the present, the mage is surprised by an ice spear very close to her. Her rival appeared out of nowhere and launched the ice attack from very close up. The young mage realizes she has no time for a protection spell and needs to act. With a swift movement, her opponent grabs the mage's arm to stop the attack. The red-haired girl is surprised, but continues to advance with her blade. Her rival then creates a sphere of mana in her free hand for the counter-attack. A huge explosion of blue mana throws them both far away with great force. The red-haired mage manages to land with the help of an ice spear for support. Her opponent also lands safely and faces the mage with determination. With her face sweating, the young noble realizes the fight is tougher than she had imagined. She faces her rival, who is now in a combat stance and much more alert. The dark-haired young woman admits to herself that that was a very close call. She remembers her friend's warning to never let her guard down against an opponent. The girl finally understands what the young mercenary meant by that warning. The red-haired mage admits that her rival's skill is completely different. With that, her opponent decides she will also fight with all her power from then on. The young woman says she will use her fire power and is confident in a battle like this. Several ice lances begin to materialize from the ground around the girl. In seconds, a huge number of ice lances float in the air, ready to attack. The audience is left with their mouths open at the number of lances, created without any spell. From a distance, the mercenary observes the battle with a calm and confident expression. With a glance, the boy thinks that his opponent has finally taken his bait. The red-haired young mage is on alert with her rival's power. The girl says she knows the noble has grown a lot, and that she won't underestimate her. With a swift movement, the red-haired mage launches a fire spell into the sky. A small, shining sphere of light appears above the opponent's ice lances. The noble then says she wants to see her opponent try to block her ice attack. With a focused look, the red-haired mage doesn't seem intimidated at all. Her hand fills with flames as she prepares for her next move. A single fire arrow is shot upwards towards the sphere of light. The young noble is surprised by her opponent's sudden action in the duel. With wide eyes, the girl seems not to believe what she is seeing. The fire arrow soars into the sky and passes through the floating ice lances. The girl doesn't understand how her opponent launched the magic without any sign of mana. Suddenly, she realizes that the sphere of light was a trap with several arrows. The young woman understands that her opponent hid this attack for a moment like this. At that moment, the fire arrows begin to fall, and one hits the ground near her. With a smile, the red-haired mage points at her opponent with total confidence. The noble then admits she can no longer predict her rival's moves. In the audience, the white-haired girl praises the mage and is impressed with her. The red-haired mage thinks to herself that she is dominating the fight now. Iceland then realizes that under these conditions, she won't be able to win the battle. She admits that Alent is one step ahead in strategy and also in boldness. But even so, the girl decides she needs to do something to turn the tables. With that, the young woman decides she needs to change her strategy from the beginning. In the distance, the white-haired boy watches the fight with a very serious expression. He then says that the real battle is only just beginning for real now. At that instant, the pendant on Iceland's neck begins to glow with a blue light. A huge amount of mana envelopes her, and her body begins to levitate in the air. Seeing this, the red-haired mage is confused, not understanding what her rival is doing. A strong blast of energy explodes from Iceland, throwing the mage backward. The mage wonders what kind of wind magic this is, since she didn't feel the mana. Suddenly, she realizes that something is very wrong with the mana around her. In an instant, the red-haired mage realizes she can no longer feel the mana around her. The mercenary explains that for a moment, all the mana in the area disappeared. This is a phenomenon called mana lingment, which organizes all the energy. It happens when a single mage uses mana far beyond their own limits. With that, the mana in the surrounding area tends to undergo this same alignment. The mana in the location goes through the alignment phenomenon to compensate for the power. In other words, the young Iceland surpassed her own limits at that moment. With her power activated, Iceland faces her opponent with a look full of confidence. The fallen red-haired mage faces a huge second-level fireball in the sky. The young raidhead is on the ground, all beaten up after a very tough training session. At this, her friend comes near, offering water, and she thanks him for the gesture. The girl holds the bottle and tells the boy that she's not very sure about one thing. She then asks if she can really beat Iceland with just a few weeks of training. With confidence, the young man states that his friend will definitely win the battle. He corrects himself and says that, to be more exact, she will be able to win the fight. Back in the present, her friends in the audience are shocked by the power of the attack. A giant second-level fireball is created in the sky, ready to attack. The red-haired mage gets desperate and yells that her friend didn't warn her about this. She then asks the boy for help and asks what she should do to defend herself. But the mercenary just stares at her with a serious expression and says nothing. Angrily, the girl yells at him to stop with the blank face and speak up. At that moment, the young woman turns and faces the fireball approaching her. The giant attack descends from the heavens with incredible speed into the arena. The girl gets desperate and thinks about how she's going to stop a second-level spell. She thinks about using an ice spear, but realizes it would be no use. With her hand outstretched, her rival seems certain of her victory in the great duel. She then thinks that for someone like her, beating Iceland is totally impossible. In the audience, the girls cover their mouths, completely terrified. The fireball is almost hitting the mage, who is thrown back by the force. However, the dark-haired young woman realizes that something strange has happened. Then, a giant explosion happens in the middle of the battle arena. The red-haired mage is thrown far away, but manages to protect herself with her arms. The force of the explosion throws her backward with great violence onto the arena floor. The noble is out of breath for having used a crazy amount of mana in the attack, but to her surprise, the red-haired mage manages to land safely on the ground. Iceland is completely shocked and wonders how her rival dodged. She understands that Alenta used the same method as her to dodge the attack. With a sigh, she admits that a second-level spell uses a lot of mana. Her hand trembles a little after having used so much energy in a single blow. Despite the fatigue, the young woman clenches her fist, determined to continue fighting. The boy explains that Iceland recognized her opponent's effort and is going all out. This is because it's the right way to show respect for such a strong opponent. The red-haired mage also faces her rival with a look full of determination. Alenta thinks that she knows what her friend is planning and that she needs to hold on. With a serious look, Iceland prepares a new and powerful fireball to attack. She yells that she will win the battle and launches her attack with all her strength. The girl grinds her teeth as she struggles to control all that power. With that, she launches the fireball towards her opponent in the arena. The audience is shocked again to see another fireball being launched, but this time, the attack is much faster than the previous one and stronger. The red-haired mage then runs towards the attack, instead of retreating to defend herself. Her opponent feels the tension of the spell and holds her own arm tightly. The fireball advances quickly as the mage runs to intercept it. With an incredible acrobatic move, the girl jumps over the fire attack. She does a flip over the fireball and takes the opportunity to prepare a spell. At that moment, the girl's body shines against the light, creating a silhouette. Iceland looks up in shock and shields her eyes from the strong, sudden light. In the air, the young mage prepares to launch her surprise counter-attack. With an energy spear in her hands, she says her rival won't read her direction. She creates an energy spear and says her rival will only waste more mana. With that, the red-haired mage launches her energy attack against her opponent. On the ground, the dark-haired young woman prepares for the impact of the attack. Iceland then creates a giant ice barrier to defend herself from the spear. But her rival realizes it wasn't a protection spell and that her mana ran out. The red-haired mage then lands safely behind the broken ice barrier. With her face sweating, the young noble is out of breath and seems finished. In the distance, the mercenary calmly says that the battle will be over very soon. With a smile, Alent thinks she has cornered her rival and that she has no more mana. She believes that with her remaining mana, that is more than enough to win. But to her surprise, a fireball emerges from within the broken ice. The young mage is completely shocked by what she is seeing in front of her. The fireball flies towards her as Iselin falls defeated to the ground. The dark-haired young woman falls in the arena, completely out of energy to fight. With a swift movement, the red-haired mage launches a small fireball into the sky. She faces her opponent on the ground with a serious and very determined look. The young noble is down behind her completely destroyed ice barrier. Even exhausted, she begs for her body to move just one more time. With determination, the girl gathers the little mana she has left in her body. Her opponent watches her in silence with a surprised look on her face. In her eye, you can see the flame of her determination not to give up the fight. In a memory, the mage says there is no noble who shines brighter than her rival. But she knows that where there is a strong light, there will always be a shadow. With a cold look, the red-haired girl remembers her past. She was always in her rival's shadow, and that consumed her from within. In her memories, she said that the young noble was born with everything and was spoiled. She then asked if her rival thought people would always be nice. With her head down, the girl listened to the taunts without saying a word. The mage wanted her opponent to show anger to look foolish, but to her frustration, the young noble just smiled in a gentle way. Alenta thought her rival was like a jewel that shines brighter when polished. This feeling of inferiority trapped her in chains of darkness. Her opponent's brilliance was so strong that it completely overshadowed her. This dragged her into a suffocating abyss of pure inferiority and envy. The girl felt like she was sinking into a sea of darkness with no hope. Even so, she continued to train in the shadows to become stronger. The young mage told herself that one day, she would be able to surpass her rival. She was going to prove her own worth and show everyone her true power. Back in the present, she faces her fallen rival and thinks she will get out of that pit. The mage admits her opponent is elegant and beautiful, even in that situation. Even with messy hair and covered in mud, the noble didn't lose her class. She wonders how her rival can maintain her composure after all that. It seems the young noble doesn't care about the vanity of her reputation. Her opponent is always true to herself and gives her best in everything she does. In the audience, everyone shouts and cheers for the young Iceland to get up and fight. The red-haired mage then creates a small flame in her hand for the final blow. She looks at her friend and remembers her doubt about whether she could really win. The boy looks at her, and she thinks that he is sure she will win soon. In her mind, the mage sees herself in an abyss of dark, endless water. She thinks this is the end, but even if she wins, the shadows still follow her. The red-haired mage thinks she will end up back where she started, in the darkness. But her opponent on the ground uses the rest of her mana for one last attack. The girl laments that her mana ran out and her spell failed badly. Her rival also admits that she is completely out of mana to fight. At this, the young noble is surprised by her rival's confession. Alenta praises her rival and says that in the end, she couldn't beat her. The mage then gives up and admits that it was an incredible fight. The audience goes wild, celebrating the victory of the young Iceland, but the red-haired mage faces the situation with a small smile on her face. As for her opponent, she looks at her in shock, not understanding what happened. A while after the fight, the two girls recover from the confrontation. The girls congratulate the young Iceland on her incredible victory. Suddenly, the dark-haired young woman notices her rival in the distance. Her rival walks away from the battle site, alone and in silence. The white-haired boy was reading a book and notices the mage approaching. He then asks if she saw everything and says that was enough. With a smile, the mage asks if he was shocked by her attitude. The young man then asks what expression her opponent made. She replies that her rival's jaw dropped and she was ready to give up. The girl says it was worth losing just to have the advantage over her rival. She then asks if the boy doesn't think she learns things quickly. Suddenly, a tear runs down the mage's face leaving her confused. With her eyes full of water, she wonders why she is crying like this. The white-haired boy looks at her with a serious and understanding gaze. The young mage can't hold back her tears and begins to cry a lot. She then sits on the ground and says she's not a child anymore to be crying. Her friend says there's nothing to criticize and that she worked very hard. He remains silent as the mage continues to cry, curled up on the ground. The girl admits between tears that she also really wanted to win the fight, but she realized that even if she won, she would still be stuck in the same place. In her mind, she sees herself sinking into the abyss of darkness again. The mage says that returning to that state is a very strong trait of hers. The boy observes her in silence as she opens up about her fears. She admits that even at that moment, her rival seemed much more graceful. With that, the young woman says that maybe she's not so different from her friend. The boy then asks what's wrong if the two of them seem a little pathetic. With tears in her eyes, the girl looks at her friend with a surprised expression. He says that if they don't have the courage to seem pathetic, they will never grow. The mercenary comforts his friend, who continues to sit on the ground crying. In her memories, the red-haired mage remembers the abyss that imprisoned her, but now she feels like she can finally step on solid ground again. The young woman looks at the image of her rival walking away on the horizon. She admits that despite everything, she no longer feels like she's at a dead end. In the distance, the white-haired girl observes the boy and the mage talking. After the fight, the girls say goodbye to Iceland and thank her for the duel. One of them says that the young noble put on a show and that she got chills. The white-haired girl then asks if her friend also noticed. Iceland admits with a serious look that she was not the true winner. Her friend looks at her with an understanding smile and agrees in silence. The dark-haired young woman remains silent and observes her rival from a distance. Iceland's friend admits that she believes she is much more talented in magic, but the young noble disagrees and says her rival surpassed her in every aspect. She points out that her opponent's skills improved greatly in a short time. From a distance, the white-haired boy watches the interaction attentively. With determination in her eyes, the young noble seems to have made a decision. She then calls her maid and asks her to approach immediately. The young woman says she needs to send an important letter to her home. With a decided look, she says she needs the mercenary boy for something. In a fancy mansion, a man reads a letter with a serious expression. He wonders why a 6th-level man is going to Ebelstein. His aide says it seems the tariff agreement was moved up. The man then deduces that the Marquis's arrival has to do with this as well. Being the master of tracking magic, the man needs a reason to go there. His son interrupts him and says there's a letter from his sister, Iceland. The young noble asked them to find a magic teacher for her, but the request was specifically for the boy who teaches her rival. The man thinks of sending a butler to negotiate aggressively, but his son says to let him handle this situation himself. He says he already needs to go to Ebelstein and will take care of it personally. Back at the mage's house, the sun sets on the horizon with a beautiful scene. The young woman tells the boy that she's going to take a break from training. The mercenary looks at her attentively and waits for her to explain her decision. She says she needs some time to organize her thoughts. The mage then asks if he will still work for the Belden mercenaries. Suddenly, the young woman steps on the boy's foot, leaving him completely confused. She looks at him with a smile on her face and seems to have an idea in mind. The girl asks if he will come back if she calls him to teach magic. The boy observes her in silence for a moment before giving his answer. He says yes, but he's not sure if he still has anything to teach her. The mage smiles and tells him not to be modest, because it doesn't suit him. With a sigh, she comments that winter is finally coming to an end. Later that night, the boy returns to the mercenary's tavern. He opens the door and enters the place with a calm expression on his face. A blonde girl sees him and is surprised by his unexpected arrival. She then shouts his name and runs to greet him with a smile. The white-haired young man says with a smile that he's finally back. Meanwhile, a carriage travels at high speed along a road. The sun shines in the blue sky as the carriage approaches its destination. Inside the vehicle, a red-haired man observes the landscape. He seems to be anxious to arrive at his final destination soon. That night, The young mage sleeps peacefully in her large bed. She grumbles and says she's on a break and doesn't want any more lessons. Her maid apologizes but says she needs to go out to see something. The girl gets up and grumbles that she asked them to say she wasn't there, with a sleepy face. She wonders who it could be at that hour. Suddenly, a man greets her and says it's been a long time since they've seen each other. He is standing at the bedroom door, along with his personal maid. The mage is shocked and wonders why her father is there. With a nervous smile, she greets him and asks him to wait a moment. But the man ignores her and enters the room, calling her his precious jewel. The next morning, the mage and her father have breakfast together. The man says a lady from the Duplain house wouldn't be an easy opponent. The girl agrees and says she learned a lot from that battle. With a smile, her father says they should keep him in their house. But the mage looks at him with a serious and slightly worried expression. She says the others will object, and he laughs and tells her not to worry. With a smile, the young mage feels more relieved by her father's words. Elsewhere, the mercenary and his friend explore an ancient dungeon. A strange energy comes out from within that dark and dangerous place. The blonde girl yells, warning that there's a monster behind her friend. Without turning around, the boy prepares to attack the approaching monster. His hand fills with red energy, and he prepares for the spell. With his eyes glowing, the boy feels a familiar energy in that place. He then launches a powerful fire attack against the goblin monster. The third level magic incinerates the monster in a matter of seconds. The boy says the third level magic is called Firewall. A huge fire explosion completely destroys the monster in the dungeon. The blonde girl screams her friend's name, completely desperate. The birds fly away from the sound of the huge fire explosion. The sun sets on the horizon as smoke rises from the dungeon entrance. Back at the tavern, the blonde girl recounts that her friend almost perished. She then gets annoyed and complains that all mages are like that. The boy explains that he felt a strange inconsistency in the middle of the fight. He says, "You don't need to worry about hitting a wall to improve." His master used to say that the wild school seeks a more natural flow. He then remembers his master's advice not to force things. An old man in a hood says that advice like that doesn't work with mages. The young mercenary faces the man and says he doesn't feel any mana coming from him. The man introduces himself as dressed and asks for a drink for his fatigue. Later that night, the full moon shines in the starry city sky. A blonde-haired girl trains alone in an empty courtyard. She concentrates and gathers the mana around her for her spell. With her eyes focused, the girl prepares to practice her magic. She then creates a blue energy arrow and fires it with precision. The girl grinds her teeth and struggles to control her magic. Two more energy arrows materialize around her, ready to attack. With difficulty, the young woman tries to keep the energy arrows stable. One of the arrows explodes near her, throwing her to the ground with force. The girl screams in frustration and complains that this is very annoying. A boy approaches and says she has grown up, but her temper is the same. He praises her for managing to summon 5 arrows and asks about her teacher. The girl says it was all her own merit and that her conceited friend didn't help. The boy then reveals that Iceland wants to hire his friend as her tutor. He says he heard that the girl's rival also wants to hire him as a tutor. The blonde girl gets annoyed and wonders why that guy is so popular. The boy says he turned a brat into a decent person and laughs. He suggests it would be good if his friend chose Iceland instead of her. The boy says that way she might be able to see him again someday. With her face flushed, the girl denies that she misses that guy. The boy thinks to himself that the rumors about the mercenary have spread. The white-haired girl hopes that no more competitors show up. Back at the tavern, the young mercenary and the mage talk alone. The old man drinks a mug of ale while the boy observes him in silence. The young man wonders why a mage of that caliber is in a place like this. The mage then asks if the boy's name is Derek with a smile on his face. He confirms and wonders how the old man suddenly knows his name. The mage then invites him for a private conversation to discuss a matter. The boy remains silent for a moment before accepting the invitation. The two of them walk through the city streets as night slowly falls. The old man says the boy's magical talent doesn't have a very clear focus. He praises the young man's skills and says they are already exceptional. The mage then asks why he works so hard and what he wants to achieve. The boy replies that he has no great ambitions and just wants to see how far he can go. He says he is just curious to know how far he can grow. The old man looks at him with a serious expression and a slight smile on his face. He says the boy doesn't have the means to reach a higher level. With a smile, the mage offers to help him on his journey. The young man is surprised to learn that this is a 6th level mage. The story goes that the mage was born a commoner and became a pillar for everyone. But on a rainy night, he returned home and found a tragedy. He found his entire family lifeless on the floor of his house. The young mage was completely in shock and horrified by the scene. Elsewhere, two nobles discuss whether the mage has finally calmed down. They mock the commoner mages and wonder why they were so greedy. One of the nobles says that if the mage shows up again, they will take care of him. With a look of anger, the noble seems determined to finish off the mage. Suddenly, a hooded man appears and attacks the noble without hesitation. The hooded man reveals himself as dressed and attacks the other noble. With a quick and precise blow, he launches the noble far away with force. The mage's blade cuts through the air and hits the noble right in the neck. The noble falls to the ground and begs for his life with desperation in his eyes. He crawls on the floor and asks for forgiveness as the mage approaches. The noble pleads for his life, but the mage looks at him with a cold gaze. With a single blow, the mage ends the noble's life without mercy. After that, Drest lived for 30 years on the run from the imperial family and the nobles. But when he became a 6th level mage, the imperial family took notice. They saw that he was a threat and granted him a title to protect him. Thus, Drest became a noble solely because of his magical prowess and his power. The young mercenary thinks he has no reason to refuse the offer. With a decided look, he accepts the proposal of the 6th level mage. In a conference room, 3 nobles gather for a meeting. They discuss the expansion to the peninsula and the dangers of the area. One of the nobles offers to send his order of knights to help, but the other noble scoffs and asks if he's referring to the mercenaries. The white-haired man looks at him with an expression of contempt. He says it must be difficult to manage a territory with a private army. The noble gets irritated by the taunt and glares at him with anger in his eyes. The other noble tries to calm the situation and suggests they visit their children. He then comments that he heard the other's daughter can fight Iceland. The man smiles and says that even though she lost, his daughter finally blossomed. He says that with a good instructor, his daughter could surpass Iceland soon. The other noble says he's referring to Derek and that he has a better plan. He believes that if the boy becomes Iceland's instructor, Alent will never surpass her. Angrily, the mage's father glares at his rival with a furious and irritated look. He says the boy's bond with his daughter is deep, and that won't happen. The other noble wonders who this Derek is be so sought after. In her room, the white-haired young woman decides to investigate the boy. Back at the tavern, the mage's father arrives to speak with the commander. The commander greets him with a smile and welcomes him to the place. But the man seems surprised and a little nervous about the unexpected visit. The noble asks if he is the commander of that mercenary corps. A mug of all is served on the table as the two of them talk. The noble says he came personally because he received no reply to his letter. The commander apologizes and reveals that Derek has been missing for days. He explains that the boy refused all requests and disappeared without a trace. The noble wonders if his rivals haven't already snatched him up to be their tutor. He then decides he will have to find the boy on his own. In her mansion, the white-haired girl eats an apple and reads a letter. She seems focused on her reading while enjoying her fruit. The young woman asks her maid when the patriarch's letter arrived. The letter said to find Derek and make him her instructor as soon as possible. With a sigh, the girl complains that this is very annoying and boring. She laments that such an important day has been ruined like this. The young woman takes off her glasses and says that this was a day she had been looking forward to. The new book by her favorite author had finally been released. With a smile, the girl wonders what the Great Ice Sword means. She then decides she needs to obey, so she doesn't have to listen to a lecture later. The young woman calls her maid and gets ready to leave her mansion. With a determined look, she says she is going to find someone and leaves the room.